Join us on the Path Radio Mix online. And to get there, type in thepathradio.com. That's thepathradio.com. And enjoy free streaming music all day long. That's it. thepathradio.com. All right, now let's get to the main show, the Monthly Social Podcast, with me, your host, Guido Perino, as you go on with Guido. Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome January 1st, 2022. I hope New Year's Eve was safe for you and that you're enjoying your New Year's Day. And I wish you, from the podcast, myself, everybody here, the very best for 2022. Let's get this podcast going and find out what we've got on tap for you to kick off the new year. We're going to start things off with a personal, up-close chat with six-time Billboarding Canadian artist Franklin McKay, as he also releases a brand new song this month called Don't Forget Love. We're also going to chat with the acting mayor of Richmond Hill, Ontario, in Southern Ontario, Canada, Joe DiPaola, and we're going to chat with him just about vision, pandemic, future, and the upcoming by-election there. A lot to hear and learn from that conversation. We're going to take a look at the trends for 2022 around food, health, money, and real estate. So that'll be interesting to check out. And of course, we're going to have our four fans talk sports, and we're going to cover the Olympics, Formula One, the NHL, the CFL, and a whole lot more. I've also got an article for you around returning to the office for work. We're going to look at mental health and physical health and economics and geography and a whole bunch more. Folks, welcome to January 2022. I hope you enjoy the podcast. There's a lot of stuff here as usual. Now, let's go. But first, a quick word from one of our friends of the podcast, Johnny Prosciutto. Johnny Prosciutto, artisanal Italian homemade products. We make it like our grandfather, or as we say, nonno. Naturally cured, old-fashioned, and delicious. The best part? We deliver straight to your front door. We offer free shipping when spending over $99. Order online at johnnyprosciutto.com and stay safe. And when you use the code GOGUIDO, you're going to save $10 off your entire order. That's the code GOGUIDO on johnnyprosciutto.com. I'd like to welcome to the podcast six-time Billboard independent artist who has also served as a 2018 judge for the Juno Awards. He's worked with several musicians, performers, and writers over the years, including Harry Hess of Harum Scarum, Bill Champlin of Chicago, Marc Jordan of Rod Stewart, Heather Rankin, the Rankin family, Greg Fitzgerald, Madonna, Hall & Oates, to name a few. I think that list could just go on and on. Franklin McKay, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here, and how are you doing?
Hey, Guido. Thanks for having me today. Doing pretty good, minus the COVID, and hopefully we get past that sooner than later.
Yeah, no kidding. It's been, I guess, almost 24 months, 2 years that we've been dealing with COVID now. And it certainly has been difficult for folks. Now, just staying on track with that, and I wanted to get right into the music on this one, because you recently released a new Christmas song this past December called Christmas Ain't the Same Without You.
Yeah, I decided that it'd be good to have a new Christmas song that was a little more reflective and a less upbeat, less cheery, just because with COVID and, I lost my mom a few years back, not everybody's jingle bell happy at Christmas. And so I think as songwriters, I co-wrote this with Harry Hess, and I think as songwriters, we try to mirror what people are feeling, what we're feeling ourselves, what's going on in life. And so essentially it was a conscious decision to sort of move in that direction as opposed to something that was just, happy and upbeat. Somebody called it a bit of a downer, and I said, well, it's a little more reflective. But it turned out really, really nice. And like you said, I think people can relate to it based on even the COVID, 2 years of COVID.
Was it harder to write than some of your other stuff?
Harry and I have a pretty consistent system where we usually start with titles, and play around with melodies, and then sort of work, the lyric into the melody once something develops. And I mean, he's a super, super talented guy that's been doing this a long, long time. And so, I mean, I've learned, tons from him. So to say that it was harder, not really, but I mean, you're going after different flavor, and essentially when you're doing that, things just sort of take a natural course or a natural direction, and the song sort of, goes where it's going to go once you have that spark.
So some of the lyrics, and you mentioned, and this is where I said we're going to get a little bit into COVID, were you drawing on the COVID experience for people?
Not, I mean, particularly. Obviously, the COVID experience, whether people want to admit it or not, is changed us. You may not be consciously reflecting on it, but clearly it's been a part of our lives, all of us, for 2 years. So, yeah, I mean, obviously it's influencing pretty much everything anybody's doing, including songwriters and myself and Harry. But like I said, we have a system we use, and once that original idea starts, we build on that, and it sort of snowballs and takes sort of its own course. And we'll go back and forth sometimes on lyric and syllables, and this doesn't sing well, that's a great lyric, but it doesn't sound right. And we'll dissect the song to completion until we've done everything we possibly can do. And at that point, we know in our heart of hearts that it's right. And when we get to that point, when we know it's right and we've left no stone unturned in the writing process, that's when we can let go and say, okay, let's let it get out to the world. It's always
interesting to hear that. Like as a fan, if I just sit back and I listen to the music as a fan, you just hear the end result, right? The end product. But there's, the detail you're giving on some of the process and steps that you go through to create it seems quite intricate. So I want to thank you for just giving us a little bit of that insight into that. I really enjoyed the song. The melody is a fantastic melody. You've got some really powerful vocals on it. And it just, it gave me a deep appreciation for how Christmas really isn't the same. It's a global rapper that extends beyond the pandemic. It has the power to reach into many social themes like relationships and homelessness and hunger and poverty and love. And I think that when you have a piece of music that can sort of transcend all those things, you're really connecting with a really wide audience, Franklin. So thanks for giving us that. I'm always appreciative of a good piece of music. So thank you for giving us that.
Well, thanks for listening and thanks for sharing.
Yeah, and the fans, right? You got some really good reception on it. Now, I mentioned in the opening that you're a 6-time Billboarding artist. You've penned and delivered some hits like More Than a Memory or Destiny or This Christmas. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. I'll Lift You Up When You Are Down, which I think is one of my favorites. Invincible, and then your most recent one in 2021, Breath of Life. Like I'm rhyming those off, and then you have this other large library of music. It just seems like such a tremendous accomplishment. Has it sunk in that you've charted 6 songs, all in the top 50 for adult, contemporary, and Christian airplay?
I think it's sunk in. I mean, I'm proud of the achievement, and I learned early on in the process that a lot of this is not just about charting. It's about a catalog that you're building. But I think Heather Rankin and I at one point discussed it's about the journey. it's about the people you meet. And, while I've been doing this, I've met so many wonderful people, musicians, non-musicians, fans. So, I'm grateful that we chart. I'm grateful to all the radio stations that play the songs and continue to play them, around the world. But I don't use charting anymore. I may have in the beginning to sort of benchmark accomplishments based on how high it charted a song, that is. I don't use that anymore as a measuring stick for the only success of that song. It's how I feel about it. It's how it's received by others. It's how, one time I had a young girl, I think she was like 14 or 15, who had heard my song "Someone" in somewhere on Sirius satellite radio in the States. And it was funny because I happened to see one of her posts about the song on YouTube at the time, and she was like, "Oh my goodness, I finally found the artist." And my friend Gary Trust at Billboard says, "Isn't that the coolest thing in the world to know that some kid or some fan somewhere around the world that listens to your music all the time, and if they were ever to meet you, it'd be like so exciting for them." And I never used to think about it that way. But then I realized, because you're too busy focusing on the business side, the writing side, I don't get caught up in, that other side of it, in a sense. And I realized, it's pretty neat that there's people out there that really dig the music and, listen to it regularly. So, it's kind of neat.
That's a feel-good story. Would you say that you can be accessible to your fans?
Well, I think at the end of the day, accessible, sure. I do some social media. I have people that do my social media as well. But I'm not super comfortable with, being the center of attention. I mean, for me personally, essentially, it's about the songs. It's always been about the music, about the songs, less about Franklin. And, I'm sort of shifting into a place where I would like to start having other people and other great artists and, new artists cut the material and making it their own. But, because my heart is in the writing and, being part of that process. But I'm not a big fan of, or never have been. If you had a magic wand, Guido, and said I could make you, ultra famous, I would turn it down. I just don't see that as sort of mixing with my personality, and I'm pretty private. And so, I realize that it's a bit of a dichotomy in the sense where, hey, you're charting Billboard hits and, but you don't want anybody to really get too intimate with you. So, it's a weird balance. But to be part of the writing and have the songs have lives and, future songs get cut by other artists, that's kind of where I feel most comfortable. So, I'm accessible, obviously, to a degree, but like I said, I don't even have a personal Facebook because, I'd rather have real life relationships and real life phone calls and real life, meet and greets where you're hanging out with your friends, not just like texting, how somebody's doing, but actually spending time with them. So, I hope that gives a little insight to that question.
That's incredible. And what transparency for fans and folks listening, for you to be able to share that level of intimacy with respect to yourself and how you approach the music and how you approach being a 6-time billboarding artist with that music. You talked about other people doing the music, and there was a song this Christmas that this past December you penned that song, but you had Bill Champlin of Chicago, Joseph Williams, Toto, Peter Ferdstadt. They did a video and released that song, right?
Yeah, but I will correct you. It was the best day of the year. And
right, the best day of the year.
No problem. Hey, it's hard to keep up on everything, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, so Peter, Bill, and Joseph released it with their band. this, I don't know, a few weeks ago anyways. He's doing really, really well. And having a legend like Bill Champlin, I mean, most people know him from Chicago, but if you ever get a chance to look through that guy's, credits, it's just remarkable. He sings on Little Genie for Elton John. He sings on 20 Years with Kenny Rogers. He sings on Bob Marley. He composed for Frank Sinatra, Elvis Presley. I mean, his credits go on and on and on and on, and I'm just naming a few.
Right.
So to have a guy like that who I have the pleasure of being friends with through this journey that we talked about earlier, one of the most nicest men you'll ever meet, super down to earth, super cool, very supportive. So yeah, having him cut the track and Joseph Williams from Toto, and yeah, it's pretty remarkable when you think about it. So very happy that happened, and hope to do some more. And I'm in negotiation with Sony Music Japan to try and get some more cuts, because they did a licensing deal with the track as well. So yeah, some good things happen when you put out good material, right?
That's exciting. And I was sitting here, I was scratching my head because you had to correct me on the song, and I was going, this Christmas. So what's happened there is that song has played in our house a lot the last few weeks from the Path Radio Mix Online station, and the kids and the family here, they've loved it. And so for whatever reason, when it comes to Christmas, I've had that song in my head. So.
Nice. Well, that was originally Harry and I did that one, as well as Best Day of the Year. I mean, I predominantly either write alone or with Harry or with Greg Fitzgerald, as you mentioned earlier.
Right.
We have good chemistry and stuff. So you always want to make sure that, as a quick little interesting story I'll share.
Yeah.
Is there was an article about Bill one time, and I think the newspaper sliced off the picture, inappropriately, where they took him out of the shot a little bit, and I got really upset at it, because I seen it as a bit disrespectful. Right. And so I sent a letter or an email to the paper saying, hey, I don't know if it's too late, but there was a glitch somewhere along. I wasn't blaming anybody, but there may have been a glitch with the crop. Anyways, I felt bad. I called Bill and I said, hey, by the way, I don't know what happened with this picture, but that's not the correct picture that was sent to them. And he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. If I had a dime or something to that effect for every time somebody spelled my name wrong, I could literally. So, I mean, being the pro he blew it off and gets that, people, that's just the way it is sometimes.
Right.
And for me, the fact is I still cared, and the paying attention to detail, just like when you're writing and working on a song. But anyways, just to interject a little story, he had mentioned, one time about singing on Elton John's record, and Elton, called people personally to ensure that he knew the correct spelling of the guys who were on the record's names. And this is at a time when Elton was a megastar, right? And so, and he still is, obviously, but the point is he took pride, and he took, personal responsibility that he wanted to make sure when somebody worked on his record that he had their name spelled right, because that was very important. So, I think, even you and I have discussed, in the past a little bit about, that generational quality sort of sometimes lacking in today's world. So, at the end of the day, that's kind of how I feel about,
That's awesome. And yeah, you're right. To have that level of accountability, and to be able to work with professionals who have that level of accountability, says a lot about, the way that you approach the music and the art as well. Now, look, I've asked, or I've mentioned these names a number of times, and you have too in our conversation. Industry names like Harry Hess and Bill Champlin and Marc Jordan and Heather, and you mentioned Heather Rankin. Those are some big names. I want to imagine that they would provide some inspiration as you start working with folks like that. But you also have a very personal inspiration for your talent, which is your mom. Really, if we can, how influential has she been in your music and where you're at with that?
Well, I mean, if it wasn't for my mom, I probably wouldn't be doing music to begin with. And I mean, I remember as a kid, she had these old, the turntables with the speakers, and we always had music around the house. I remember some of the albums too. Like she had, Barbra Streisand and Roger Whittaker and Donny Osmond, and and even the Bee Gees, and like. So I grew up with a pretty good selection of music that was always playing. And I think when I was about 5 or 6, she bought a piano, an upright, and she made me take lessons. And I always tell this story in interviews, but I was a terrible piano student. I didn't practice. I didn't like it. I hated it. I like playing the piano and I like the sounds, but I was more interested in trying to write my own little thing than learning somebody else's. And I kind of used to have a pretty good ear, so I would sort of fudge it as far as I could through the lesson. And then when I made a mistake, he's like, "Oh, start from there," and he'd realize, "Oh, you didn't learn this." And that was a Sioux guy, actually, Bernie Stewart's. And so, anyways, we've kept in touch over the years, and I'm grateful for him being the teacher he was, and I apologize to him that I was such a crappy student. But anyways, that's where it started. My mom, she insisted that I learn piano. She had me in the music lessons, all through my early age and years. And, and then she was very supportive. I remember when, this is a technology music geek thing, but I think it was like 1986 or 1987. Korg came out with a new keyboard. It was state of the art, called the Korg M1. And so we went down to Arnill's in Sault Ste. Marie, Queen Street.
Arnill's Music, right?
Yeah, Arnill's Music.
Yeah. Wow, I haven't heard that name in a long time.
Yeah, I remember the lady's name was Valerie, was the daughter, and
and
her mother owned it. And well, it was a family business. And anyways, I remember like going in as a kid, I think it was like 16 or something. And the thing was like, and we're talking 1987 or 86, it was $4,000 plus tax.
Wow.
Right? And I remember my mom bought it for me. And I was like, and I went home, and this thing was like state of the art, and it had an 8-track recording in it. And so I just used to write songs, and I'd record with it, and I'd try and create sounds, and and it was those kind of reasons that I probably got into music, because my mom was very, influential in putting me in lessons. But then, on the back end of that, she also allowed me to find my own path and supported me through the purchasing of, synthesizers and sort of. So yeah, it was a full circle. And before she passed, I mean, she got to hear the records, and she would smile, and so I owe her a lot.
What a great memory! What a great memory, Franklin, and for you to go from the stages of I don't really want to do this to immersing yourself into the technology and the advancements as that happened throughout the years. I guess it's safe to say that while other kids were playing ball hockey on the streets of Sault Ste. Marie, you were pianoing.
I'd get called out of the ball hockey games.
No way.
I grew up in a neighborhood with Paul DiPietro was on my street hockey team, who we know was a Stanley Cup champion.
Right.
So I was surrounded by like really good hockey players, and we were super competitive. And I mean, in those days, you grow up and the neighborhood was like a big family.
Right.
But the funny thing was, I was playing ball hockey. I'd get ribbed because my aunt would say, time for a piano lesson, and I get pulled out of the hockey game, or the ball hockey game. So, I did both. But like I said, I did enjoy music, and I did enjoy creating music. So that's what I did. And even in high school, I was in the studio. There was a the studio called Satellite Sound.
Oh man, you're bringing all the memories back. Satellite Sound, Sault Ste. Marie.
And I used to save my money up, and I'd go in there. I think it was the first time I was in there, I was 14 cutting a demo. And I mean, I look back on these things; they're terrible, right? But the process and getting your buddies to come jam with you and play, it was fun. It was exciting, and so I mean, I think I did about 10 tracks there, and I really that was sort of the opening of the door, further to go the route that I did, right?
I wonder if is Satellite Sound still around? Do you know?
No, I think Bob. I think his name was Bob McLeod owned it,
right?
And I think he moved to Sudbury, if I'm correct, because I did chat with him through email a few years back, and asked him just out of the long chance that some of these reel-to-reels were around, because I had I had about 10 tracks, and it'd be kind of funny to hear some of this stuff I did back as a kid, right?
That's incredible. It's incredible. Again, another incredible memory, and just the music businesses that you're throwing out there from Sault Ste. Marie days. Listen, I mentioned that you had like six on the Billboard. Of the 6, can you say that you have a favorite one?
I wouldn't say. I think at the end of the day, anybody has kids. It's like, what's your favorite? Which kid's your favorite? Now, I mean, they're all special. They all have meaning. They all have, so there's no favorite per se. Obviously, I listen with a different set of ears than the fan or other people. So yeah, there's sometimes I wish I would have did this a little different, but it's sort of like a photograph, and it captures a time. It captures the feelings, the performance, and just much like a photograph, it is what it is, and you can't sort of go back and change it. So
right,
I'm proud of the catalog, but moving forward, I'm always trying to reach a new height, a higher benchmark with the writing, with the performance, with the vocals. So yeah, the benchmark just keeps moving higher, and it sometimes gets really hard to reach, because if you have a top 25 hit on Billboard, that's a pretty tall order for the next track, right? But yeah, essentially, I'm just proud of the catalog, and no real favorites at this point.
So I'm foreshadowing when I say thanks for painting the picture for us, because I'm going to get to pictures in a little bit. With all that you've done and all the different talent around you, is there someone in the music industry that you compare yourself to, or that alternatively has influenced your music style that you can identify with?
I don't know that I compare myself to anybody, because I think the thing that separates me is it's me, and I have I've been told by enough people that you have a very distinct, unique voice. Some of my favorite singers are like people with very unique voices, like Daryl Hall and Huey Lewis, and just very distinct. You hear them and you know who it is, right? It's so as far as comparing, no, I don't really compare. Obviously I use templates of things that I like Breath of Life. I had been really into the 1975, and so when Greg and I start working on that track and discussing production style and elements, I said, I'd really dig if let's try and do something like this 1975 band. So I'll use things that I like and try and integrate that into things that I do production wise or sound wise. And yeah, essentially that's kind of where that sits, right?
So again, thanks for you're giving us the inside scoops and the tidbits here. I'm gonna press you a little bit more if I can, in support of your fan base, new or old. Is there anything your fans might be interested in knowing about you, or maybe something that they don't know about you?
Well, I mean, I think we touched on it a little earlier that, my intention has never been to come out and try and be famous. I don't even I don't feel comfortable with that whole, I don't feel comfortable with that whole optic, if you will. I think people are all equal, regardless of who you are or how, influential you are. You're still a human. I think we all are equal. I think some people have gifts, that differ. Well, everybody has gifts. They're just different. So essentially, I think the brand that, I've had people say, well, you should do more of this or do more of that. And I said, listen, I'm, as an independent artist, I have enough to take care of with writing and recording and, doing a lot of the stuff on my own. So, or with Harry or Greg or whoever it is, but, there's not this big team of major label behind everything. So you have to pick and choose where you spend your time and energy.
Right.
So for me, it's essentially the music is what's important first and foremost, and always music. And so, to answer that question directly, just that, I'm a regular guy, and that's kind of what I want people to get out of it. It's, I'm not trying to be pretentious or, I don't think I'm better than anybody. I don't think, in fact, anybody is. And at the end of the day, yeah, we're just, we're all equal.
It's your modesty. It's your modesty, Franklin. So I've mentioned Sault Ste. Marie a couple of times. You were born and raised in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, Canada. But your music has really taken you around the world. I've noticed that you've been posting some photographs from some of your travels on Instagram, which, by the way, they're some of those photos are just breathtaking and they're quite amazing. And you seem to have extended your artistic talent beyond music. What got you into photography, and is that something that you've integrated into your music or vice versa?
I think my DNA is wired to be creative in pretty much anything I do. So I think photography just sort of evolved. I like writing. I like creating, whether it be music or taking pictures as a form of creativity. So, I don't know if this counts, but I remember my mom bought me a Polaroid when I was like 7. And funny enough, my friend Joe Russo from Sault Ste. Marie, it's one of those old ones when you would take the picture, it'd come out right away. And I remember going over to his house and then get mad because his mom would want me to take pictures. And then I'd waste some of my film, like, because you'd only get 10.
Right.
And but my point is, I was taking pictures when I was 6 years old, believe it or not, with my own camera. And, obviously, with the way society is and Instagram and all of this stuff, more people are, through technology capturing moments now, much more than, say, when I was growing up.
Yeah.
I just see things, and, I go out in photography groups and I meet other photographers, and I have friends that are photographers. And so, when I'm walking, I'll see something, and it just became a natural thing just to want to take pictures. And, and I sort of like balance exercise with photography. And I figure, I'm out walking and getting some exercise. It sort of complements, the fact that I love taking photography. So it's sort of like a dual objective in that I'm getting exercise doing something I like.
Right.
So, and as far as integrating into the music, yeah, well, I sometimes the album covers are photos that I've taken. So, yeah, I guess that way it is integrated.
So by the way, those Polaroid Instacams they've made a comeback, and I'm serious. They've made a comeback, and this past Christmas, it's really hard to get one of those. And, it's really interesting watching kids get excited for these instant cameras all over again. And I'm thinking back to my childhood going, yeah, like I remember like these things were transitioning out. We were getting into better cameras, and for whatever reason now, they're transitioning back in. So
it's the same as vinyl, right?
Right. Yeah. Right. What was here has come back around, I suppose. Interesting insights. If anybody who's listening hasn't checked out the pictures on Instagram, I'll have the link to that as well as several other links for Franklin. But you really need to check out this photography. There's some just amazing portraits and pictures that you've done there. Now, as I'm talking about you going around the world taking pictures, you've lived in Sault Ste. Marie and Richmond Hill, I think Toronto, Los Angeles, Stouffville. I think Calgary, like
Vancouver, to name a few.
It's incredible. Like you've been to you've lived in so many places. Looking back, is there a favorite place that you've lived, or is there a place that you call home? All right, now before Franklin answers that, we're going to take a quick break and hear from one of our podcast friends. So let's do that and then come back to find out where Franklin calls home.
Recipes at My Table is a work of family, love of food, and sharing of stories. The stories keep the memories alive and make every day a party in my kitchen. Join me for the sharing of traditional Italian recipes and so much more. Visit me at www.recipesatmytable.com.
All right, welcome back. And now we're going to go back to our chat with six-time Billboard artist Franklin McKay, and he's about to tell us where he considers home with respect to all the places that he's lived. Looking back, is there a favorite place that you've lived, or is there a place that you call home?
Well, I will qualify this. I think I have gypsy blood. No, really. I like adventure. I like moving around. I like meeting new people, experiencing new things. So, in saying that, Sault Ste. Marie is obviously home as far as my childhood, where I was born, formative years, adolescence, even into my teens or late teens. Still always have fond memories of Sault Ste. Marie just because that's where I grew up and made a lot of lifelong friends there, really, really good people. And every time I go back, it's emotional because I'll reflect on the street I grew up on, or, remember times with, my friends or my mom or whoever it may be. And so, I would say that the first half of my life, definitely Sault Ste. Marie is home. And even living in various places, the second half of my life, if you were to ask me today, I'd still have to say the home is Toronto. And just because I spent a good half of my other half of my life living in Toronto as well. So I think those two, but, I miss Calgary. Calgary was, an amazing city. Vancouver is an amazing city. Ottawa is an amazing city, and it's almost like going to, just to use a food reference, but it's almost like going to this amazing buffet and there's all these exquisite, amazing dishes, and somebody asks you, like, which one do you like the best? Well, I kind of like them all, so, I just say, like, the Sioux is always going to be, home as far as, the first half of my life, and Toronto is home for the second half. Just based on the amount of time I spent in both, right?
You named off a lot of hockey towns there in Canada. Are you a particular hockey fan of any one team? Or?
Oh, I better. You know what? If I used to be my whole life, and then I got frustrated, and I learned this: hockey's almost like politics and religion. It's better just not to say.
But you have a collection of hockey jerseys, I would imagine, right?
I do.
Yeah, I kind of figured you would.
Including Paul DiPietro's.
Right,
Montreal,
because
number 15.
You guys were childhood friends, right?
Yeah, we actually had a little store together up in the Sioux, DiPietro Sports, if you remember that.
Oh, yeah. That was on, was it not Northern? Was it Northern?
Yeah, Northern Avenue.
Northern Avenue, right. Wow,
yeah,
ever
the
neat.
whole gang. There's Todd and Dickie and Paul, and anyways, that was a good time too.
Yeah, that was a nice store. You guys had a lot of really nice stuff in there. I remember one of the things I remember, the really nice football helmets.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Paul used to get, because he was playing with Montreal, so he could get all these cool, like Patrick Waugh game used jerseys and
Amazing.
sticks, and yeah, it was fun. It was fun. Those were good times for sure.
So Sault Ste. Marie, we've said that name a lot. Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. It's a relatively small Northern Ontario community. It borders the state of Michigan with the United States. Thinking back and growing up there in the Sioux, was becoming a billboarding musician your childhood dream? How did you become Franklin McKay, billboarding artist, and was it harder because you came from a small community to become that?
I don't think it was. I mean, I had visions of. I mean, like every other kid, my first goal was as a young kid growing up, even into early high school, was I wanted to play in the NHL. But then you play against guys like Paul and Chris Simon is a friend that I grew up with as well. And I mean, you see these guys at a different level and realize, okay, well, it's a lot harder to make the NHL. So I think a lot of kids in Sault Ste. Marie growing up that's probably their dream too. But I did like music, and I did have visions of, pursuing a music career. And as far as like growing up in the Sioux, I think in many ways, growing up in the Sioux was a blessing in, smaller communities, because, I mean, I have friends that I've been close friends with, literally. So I'm 51, and, I've been friends with them for like 46 years. And, and not just one, like several, like many actually. And so I think the benefit of a small community is you get to grow up with, people, and you're surrounded by, sort of, it's not that you're naive, but you're not exposed to all the big city, culture and stuff. And so the thought of like becoming, a famous hockey player, musician, you kind of don't know any better that you're not going to achieve it. So you just believe it and work hard at it. And, so yeah, I don't think it was more difficult, but I think there was definitely, blessings for growing up in a smaller community that, big city people sometimes don't get, right?
Right. It sounds like you got a little bit of love for Sault Ste. Marie there, Franklin.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I still keep in touch with grade school and high school teachers that I had, family, friends, neighbors that I had, and obviously the friends that I grew up with. Like I said, I've been friends with a lot of these people for 45 years, and and that's just something that I think when you live in bigger cities, it's the time is, everybody's hustle bustle, and, neighborhoods, are huge, and, so you don't get that closely, close-knit, relationship building that you do in a smaller community like the Sioux.
So let's talk about love for a second. We're in 2022. Incredible, right? I don't know if we said Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Right. We should have said that right off the bat. But you've got a new song, and it's called Don't Forget Love. What can we expect to hear from this new song this month? Well,
this song is being released to adult contemporary Christian and pop radio. It's being released around the world. And this was a co-write with Greg Fitzgerald, who you mentioned off the top. Greg's a super, super talented writer. He's very pop oriented, and he's had success with like Kylie Minogue and Madonna and stuff. Big records. And him and I just gel really well together. I cut the vocal for this track actually in Toronto at Pete Lesperance's studio. And for those that don't know Pete, he's the guitar player, in my opinion, one of the best guitar players in Canada for sure. So he's a guitar player for Harum Scarum, Harry's band and Pete's band. But he's also like a really good producer and has his own studio. So I went and cut the vocal at his place, and and I've cut a bunch with Pete as well, not just this one. And he's like, "Wow, you're in the pocket. You seem to have this. You seem to have found your voice here." Like, so I'm not sure what transpired, but for whatever reason, this track vocally, I just seemed to be able to have the full control over what I wanted to do vocally. And I think, when you hear it, you'll get it. It's probably, in my opinion, one of my best vocal performances to date. And, this is the 26th track that I've done. And, we're getting close to like 3 complete albums. So, I mean, maybe it's an evolution. Maybe it just finally clicked. I'm not sure exactly why, but I'm very proud of this track. And I think, the message is very powerful and also transcends a lot of scenarios, and a lot of people can relate to it. Like Don't Forget Love. That's kind of, at the end of the day, all we have. We have people. And, you take fancy cars and, money and jobs and careers. And I mean, at the end of the day, all of that is nice. But really what matters at the end of the day is people and love, right? So
it's kind of interesting, because everything that we've talked about right up until this question sort of has culminated to those 3 words: don't forget love. You've talked about all sorts of different kinds of love that you've had for people and places and experiences and processes throughout your entire life almost. So I'm just thinking, maybe that's it. Maybe that's where you found the pocket, because this is bringing all that together. And when you say the pocket, just for folks listening, what's another thing for the pocket? Is that like the sweet spot, or you've achieved a level, or you've hit a level that you haven't hit before? Or?
Yeah, I think in relation to what I'm talking about for my vocals is just that, I went in and, when I was singing the song, it was just, there was a lot of good performance. There was nice emotion that you could feel through the performance. The tone was very strong. It wasn't pitchy, it wasn't flat, it wasn't sharp. It was, it was just that it was almost like I had been singing this thing, perfectly, as perfect as I could sing it. And, and that's where when you're recording records, they talk about, if you watch some of these classic albums like Elton John's Yellow Brick Road or Fleetwood Mac, Rumors, right. They always talk about there's magic in the room and certain things work or happen. It's sort of an intangible, but, I guess the magic for me was this vocal. I felt it, and so did Pete. And so, I think the listeners, when they hear it and they pay a little more attention to the inflections in the vocal performance, they'll probably pick up that something's maybe a little different, right?
Well, they're going to get to hear it on our show here today, but it's also going to be available on some major platforms, right? Like Spotify and Apple Music and things like that.
Yeah, it'll be available everywhere.
Awesome.
And it's going out to radio, like I said, around the world via Play MPE as well. So any music directors listening, be sure to check it out.
Well, I thought your vocals, they were really powerful on the Christmas song that you had released, Christmas Ain't the Same. So if it's an extension of that, I'm going to be pumped to listen to this today. So we'll get to that. So thanks for sharing that. Just on the heels of you're educating us a little bit with the terminology and the equipment and things like that. In my opening, I said to you, I introduced you and I said, hey, you're an independent artist. I don't know if everyone listening knows what that means. And you've said it a few times. Hey, I've gone through this process. It's sometimes different. I'm an independent artist. It takes this path or that path. Can you touch upon what that means in terms of maybe the major labels versus the indie model, how it applies to you and your music?
Well, I think with independent, it is what it is. You're independent, and in my situation, what it means is that I have to sort of do most of the things that a major label would do, which means I have to get it out to radio. I have to create the release, get the artwork to spec, the credits, obviously write, find a producer, which I stick with, Harry and Greg for the most part, mostly everything I do. But, so, I do have a team in the sense where all the amazing players that play on my stuff and producers as well. But, there's a lot that's left to do individually where you don't have a team after the music, where you have to register songs with performing rights organizations, you have to code them, you have to register them with Nielsen SoundScan, you have to make sure they have the correct ISRCs if you do a change. There's a whole bunch of legal, if you're doing licensing deals, there's contracts. They're legal deals. So essentially you wear the hat of like a marketing person, you wear the hat of a lawyer, you wear the hat of an artist, a writer, graphic designer, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes than somebody would know if they weren't doing it. So, that's all. It's a lot of work, essentially.
Yeah, no, and thanks, because I don't know that everybody realizes when you hear that, well, independent artist, what are the things that kind of go on for the individual, and you've given us some insight into that, which I appreciate, and I'm sure they do too. Now you've been making music for several years. You've mentioned your age a couple of times. I don't know if you meant to do that, but we don't always get guests who want to mention their age, but and I've said, hey, look, you've worked with all these high-profile industry personalities. I mentioned at the beginning you were a judge for the Juno Awards, and you've traveled the world. Franklin, in all those experiences, is there a wow moment that you've had in your musical journey that you can think back on?
Yeah, I there's two that I think are kind of neat, and so as a kid, obviously growing up, I listened to a lot of music, and the stuff that I listened to, I liked Chicago, I liked Speedwagon, and Journey, soft rock, but I listened to the radio a lot, and really loved hits. I listened to hits, but essentially, so the first time I worked with Bill Champlin, we did some co-writing, and he sang some backing vocals and some licks on one of my tracks that I wrote with Marc and Harry, Without Your Love. And anyways, we were chilling at my place after the studio one night or one evening, and Bill sits down at my piano in my living room and starts playing Hard Habit to Break and singing it, and it's just Bill and I, and this is the guy that I grew up listening to his records, right? Chicago, and him and Peter Cetera were the guys on all those records that I loved, and here he is singing the actual song in my living room to me, just him and I, and so that was a wow moment. And then I think when we were sitting there, he got a call, and I don't remember exactly if it was Richard Marx or Huey Lewis, but somebody called him, and he's like, hey, and it was just like, wow, is this guy connected? And so that was kind of cool, and then hearing these things, getting to work with guys like Greg and Harry and Marc, and they've been doing this a long, long time, a lot of experience, and so, and then hearing your ideas come together, and that's a wow factor too when they're done. It's an incredible feeling when you've put all that work and then you hear the final product and you're just very happy with it. So that would be a wow moment every song.
No kidding. Well. No kidding, right? This is it's hard to believe. This is the third season for the podcast. And in that time, I know that we now have people and fans that are listening, from school kids with hopes and dreams to those who are retired and are listening while they enjoy this, with their cup of coffee, maybe. I always ask the guests, and especially folks like yourself who've had the ability and the opportunity to grow and learn and get to where you are. What advice would you have for aspiring artists, and equally for anyone just listening to enjoy the music? What advice could you impart on folks, Franklin?
That's a tough question, but I think essentially, I think it's you have to believe in yourself. Obviously, I mean that's where it starts, and you have to surround yourself with positive people for sure, and you also have to learn to incorporate a positive spirit into your life. So, you missed the bus, okay, but you don't let that turn your day upside down. You find some grace in it somewhere, and essentially, I think having a positive frame of mind and a positive spirit, which leads to a positive energy, gets you a lot further and makes you internally happier. And I think that's a big part of success, is just being happy and being grateful for whatever it is you have, and applying that to your goals and your dreams, and being okay if things don't go the way that you want them to go all the time, because there may be a silver lining that it's turning for something better. So essentially, I think it's that's the advice I give people.
Almost like slowing it down, react within your world, within your space, and try to find opportunities as opposed to focusing on things that may not have happened the way that you had wanted or thought that they would happen. So certainly good thoughts for folks to digest. And I always do that, Franklin, just because, like I said, we do have kids who are listening and trying to make life decisions, and others who just reflect. So I certainly appreciate that insight. I can't thank you enough. You've given us some additional insights into your music, into really your craft. You let us into your world, into you. Is there anything that you would like to leave us with today as we close this out?
Well, just thanks for having me on the podcast, and I hope you guys enjoy the catalog and the new single, Don't Forget Love.
Franklin, thank you again so much. Folks, that's Franklin McKay, 6-time Billboard artist, multi-talented Canadian who has a new song, as you heard, called Don't Forget Love. I think you're going to love it. I will have all of Franklin McKay's content links in the podcast notes. Please be sure to check it out. Thanks again, Franklin, and take care. All right, stay tuned, because we are going to hear Franklin's new song, Don't Forget Love, a little bit later on in the podcast. But for now, we're going to switch gears. Well, since we're in 2022, often when we get to a new year, everybody likes to have predictions or a look into the year and say, hey, I wonder what's going to happen if, or with this particular area, or myself, or my health, or all sorts of those things. And I was reading the 2022 Old Farmer's Almanac. And I thought I would just look at 3 areas that, they've been important to us the last couple of years with COVID-19, and I think they're going to continue to be important to us. But that's food, health, and home. And here's some interesting numbers when it comes to food stats for Canadians. 80% of consumers will pay extra for produce that's locally grown. And I'm just thinking, I think that's true. Like, there's a local farm not far from me, And in the summer, I see lines and lines and lines. And if you check that farm out, it is sometimes a little bit more expensive than, the grocery store, but it's, the sales office is just a few hundred yards away from where they're picking the food. As opposed to sometimes, you go to the grocery store and you're picking up vegetables that have, been picked off the tree before they're ripe, and they've traveled, a week or so to get here and so forth. So that's, I thought that was kind of an interesting tidbit. Now here's an interesting number in terms of what will we spend on food annually? And the number that they have is $12,667. That's the amount that a household will spend on food annually. Now, what's interesting, though, is that when we think about the food that we waste, right? The food that we're not eating, that we discard, the value of that is $1,766 per household. So think about that. You're going to spend almost $13,000 on food, but you're going to throw $2,000 away. If you were walking on the street and you saw $2,000 just laying there, just found money, would you pick it up or would you leave it there? So something to think about when you're cooking, the amount of people you're cooking for, and the food that you're going to throw away. Now here's another one. 20% of consumers never eat food past its expiration date. I wonder how much of that goes into the $1,766 of food waste. And I get it. There's different reasons why you don't eat things past their expiration date. But, I have yet to see a bag of milk that instantly expires on, at 12 a.m. on the day that it says that, it's going to expire. There's usually some leeway. Either way, it's just a matter of taking some time to, look at the product and say, hey, is it still good or not? Okay, the last tidbit before we move on to health is this. Consumers will balance their desire for plant-based alternatives with actual plants to maximize nutritional benefits and watch their wallets. Now, that sounds fair, given that we know grocery prices, have been escalating and portions have become smaller, all part of the inflation cycle that we're experiencing. But hey, if you're going to watch your wallet, then look at that $2,000 that you might also waste in food. So there's some predictions for 2022 when it comes to food. Now, how about health? And hey, we've been on a health watch for the last couple of years, like probably never before when it comes to COVID-19 and other things. But what are we talking about here? Well, they say that there's a buzzword that they identify called ecotherapy, which is a treatment that will promote well-being through outdoor activity. Well, I think through all the lockdowns and all the other changes that we've seen the last few years, I think that's been something that's already happening. But I can't see why it can't continue to happen, whether we have COVID or not. We've learned some valuable health lessons during that time. Now, we're transitioning from food, but they also say this as far as health goes. The food as medicine approach will topple our reliance on pharmaceuticals. Doctor and farmer collaborations will have us trading pills for produce. Interesting possible trend. If folks are looking to grow more of their own produce and food, perhaps that it lends itself to looking at what those food and nutrients might offer us. And I know there's different programs out there, that you can leverage that will help with that as well. Now, one of the things that's happened, I think, during COVID is folks have looked at their sleep patterns, and through stress and worry and all these other elements that we're facing in the environment that we haven't faced before, sleep has been one of the challenges. And so one of the predictions here is that more practice will go into the circadian eating, which is eat in daylight and stop after dark. And that's supposed to help with your sleep patterns. Also, when it comes to sleep, donning sleepwear that adjusts its temperature. Imagine that, right? Because there's some nights, hey, you get, even though it's winter or summer, hot, cold, and you're like, oh, these pajamas are too hot, or, oh, I need pajamas, I feel cold, right? Imagine if you're wearing sleepwear that adjusts its temperature. The other thing is the use of kill switches to shut off all lights and Wi-Fi in a room. That's supposed to apparently increase. And use lights that automatically go from bright blue light in daytime to warmer hues at night to boost melatonin levels. Now, here's some numbers. 51% of consumers are very or extremely likely to tell their doctors when they disagree with them, as far as health goes. And 50% of people who use fitness and health tracking devices share the data with their doctor. Now, that's interesting. If you look down, if you're wearing one of those smart watches, it's got, heart information, your heart rate, your sleep patterns, and not just that, but you can really leverage now some amazing reports to help, your doctor and give them information that maybe both of you never had before. Now, here's something that's in development. This is kind of interesting. Technology to reprogram cells to speed up healing. Something better than polysporin, I guess. But that'll be interesting to see what that is. And the last thing that I'm going to mention from this section is doctors will be writing prescriptions for produce redeemable at farmers markets. I don't know what insurance company is going to support that, but it is certainly an interesting notion that a doctor would write a prescription for produce that would be redeemable at a farmer's market. I mean, hey, you can write the prescription and you can go pick it up, I guess, but I don't know about coverage, so it's important to check out your plan before you rely on that too much. All right, so we've talked about food and we've talked a little bit about health. Now, around the house, and we have been spending a lot of time around the house. So what are some of the trends that we can look at for 2022? Well, they say in the book here that we're going to be seeking sleek, minimal rooms with statement furnishings. So reducing clutter. We've probably accumulated a lot of stuff as we kind of, hang out in our homes and try to use it in those different ways. But it says that we're spacing out. We're utilizing also all of our available spaces in our homes. We're looking at rooms and seeing how adaptable they are, how ergonomic and how private. Those are all important things that have come out in the last bit and will continue to come out in 2022, or so we believe. And looking at things like underutilized walk-in closets. Those are going to be converted to workout spaces or offices or even guest rooms. I'm trying to think, you have to have a pretty big walk-in closet to convert it to a guest room. Otherwise, you're going to feel a little bit like Harry Potter under the stairs, maybe. Also, greenhouses are becoming dining rooms. Now, that's interesting. I mean, hey, we're dealing with outdoor dining. And if you look at a greenhouse and, if you can convert that, I'm sure in some fall or spring moments that, with the right temperature in there, that could be kind of a neat experience. Tables with adjustable heights are used as desks or dining tables. That's the other trend that's going on. Now, as far as home office options, garden sheds are being refitted as a home office. Leased pods on lawns. And freestanding buildings with French doors and covered porches. That's what folks are going to be looking for, or continue looking for. And that makes sense. I mean, we just talked about, working remotely versus working in an office and trying to find some spaces for yourself from a mental health perspective. Colors for homes, kitchens, going with green marble countertops and bright blue cabinets. Now, to each their own. Maybe that's just a 2022 trend. I don't know. I couldn't see myself in a green and blue kitchen, but it could possibly become a trend. Bedrooms, cobalt blues, beige with black accents. Again, sounds a little different, having a darker bedroom, those darker bedroom colors. Bathrooms, pale blues and golden yellows, and living rooms, teals and light grays. Well, that's a colorful home if you go with all those different colors. And again, hey, everybody's got their own taste, but we'll see if those come to fruition in 2022, or maybe that's something that interests you as you're planning to do some of that. In demand, multifunction, flexible rooms, and electric car docking stations. Now, the last one's going to be interesting because we know, in some places there's electric car programs and you can utilize that. But still, in other places, the regular old gas cars are still the dominant car. So if we start to see a change in that, yeah, electric car docking stations could certainly make a surge in the home. In development, windows of transparent wood, which is safer during extreme winds, being non-shattering and more efficient than glass. And hey, that's an interesting one too, given some of the weather patterns that we've seen around the world and how important that might be. I'm going to throw in one last thing, because to do all these things, we talked about food, we talked about health, and we've talked about homes. But money, right? Where do we see money in 2022? Here's an interesting thing. We know real estate has accelerated and homes are selling at record highs. Could you imagine if you have a pet, the pet becomes part of the home contract? And that's what people are talking about, apparently, that realtors are selling houses with pets included. So, I mean, hey, is your home move-in ready? It is. And there's Rover, right? Waiting for you, instant pet as you do that. And financial therapists are helping with both money problems and emotions. I never heard of a financial therapist, but given the conditions of the economy, I can see where perhaps, some people might benefit from that. Now, 10% of people have a credit card that they keep secret from their partner. 70% of employees say that they got a raise after asking for one. So if that's in your money future for 2022, you should probably feel that out and figure out the best way to do that. 35% of parents admit to trying to keep up with the Joneses. 35%. And that means they're just trying to, hey, if the neighbor, did some sort of home modification, then they might go along and do that. And that's certainly helping to drive, some money through different avenues, let's say. Now, $8.75 is the average amount of pocket money parents have been giving to kids each week. That's interesting, especially, the past little while, because I'm not sure where they're going to use that $8.75. I think when I give the kids money, it goes into their piggy banks because they haven't really had an opportunity to spend it. Well, anyways, look, those are some interesting tidbits in terms of some of the trends and patterns that we either have been experiencing or that are looking to continue in 2022. Maybe what I'll do, because I really enjoyed this, in the future episodes, maybe I'll get into some weather patterns and other kind of interesting things. I just really enjoy going through the Farmer's Almanac and kind of getting these little bits of information, and I thought it'd be fun to share with you. So there you go. Let me know if you've painted your kitchen teal or if you've changed your plans in terms of food waste or growing your own vegetables, and where you're heading with all that stuff. It's always fun to hear from you. All right, it's time for a little music break here on the Go On With Guido podcast. As you know, I always like to play some tunes, and we're still going to get to Franklin McKay with his new song, Don't Forget Love. But before we get there, we're going to listen to a song from someone I've referred to in past episodes as a Canadian songbird, and that is Kaleigh Watts. This is a song from her Smoke Lake album called The Hunt.
hush, hold, said the man in the foreground. Wonders where they wander about on his slender sheet. Ears work hard to listen, while gears turn close in distance. The hunters are hunting and hunting the hunted. And ooh, cried the man to his pack. And ooh, fearful far on his back. Hunters, they hunt well the gather. Hunters, they hunt well the gathers. They hustle.
That is Kaleigh Watts with her song, The Hunt, from her album, Smoke Lake. I'm going to have all of her links in the podcast notes. What a wonderful tone to her voice. I just absolutely love it. I hope you do too. So check her out. All right, for our next segment, we're going to go a little bit politics, a little bit Southern Ontario, and a little bit personal with the acting mayor of Richmond Hill, Joe DiPaola. Listen into our chat. I'd like to welcome to the show Richmond Hill, Ontario, acting mayor Joe DiPaola. We're going to cover a wide range of topics today with the acting mayor as we get to know a little bit more about him, his plans for the future, and get some insights on life and politics. Now, before I do that, I want to set some context up for folks who are listening in on Richmond Hill. It's a community in the Greater Toronto area, north of Toronto, in Southern Ontario, Canada. The population of the community is projected to be about 231,400 for 2021. When I look at some census data from 2016, the land area was about 101 square kilometers. We had about 60% of the dwellings being single detached homes. And again, you look at this and you go, the average cost of a home back then, about $1 million, might be a little bit more now. From an education perspective, you got over 50% of the populations with a bachelor degree. You've got occupations focused in sales and service, business, finance, administration, management. And we had an average household income around $116,000. Now, that's just to set up some context. Mayor Joe, thank you for your patience as I just, gave people some insight into the community. Thank you for being here with us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Guido. And I'm really thrilled to be on your podcast. Great opportunity to talk to some people about Richmond Hill. That's my favorite subject.
Yeah, listen, I'm super excited to have you. And I think from the minute that you knocked on my door, you were doing some campaigning, you knocked on the door and you said, "Hey, I'm Joe," and we started talking. And I, in the interest of the community, because I do some community talking, I said, "Hey, you want to try and do a podcast with me?" And we've been sort of, going back and forth trying to land on that so that we could have this conversation today, right?
I'm glad it's worked out, Guido. I offered to jump on here, and I'm glad I did, and it was really nice to meet you. As I meet so many fabulous people across Richmond Hill. It's important to me. I try to get to every single door. We have 60,000 households, and it's great to meet someone who's doing something exciting like this.
Yeah, and you know what? I remember the other thing that you mentioned. Hey, you're going door to door, and we're in the middle of a pandemic, as everybody knows. You're wearing your mask. You look like you were prepared. You had your whole distancing thing going on. So I can't imagine it's an easy thing to do under normal circumstances, let alone during what we're dealing with, the pandemic. But we're going to get to that. Listen, before we get into some of the career in politics, I want to talk about Richmond Hill for a moment, because I moved here in 2008. And around that time, the population was, I think, around about 170,000 people. And it reminded me a lot of my hometown community, which is Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, which a legal drive from here to there is about 8 hours. Now, I say it reminded me, the population up there was about 75 to 80,000 people. So it was double the community, but it had a lot of green space. It was easy to get around in traffic. I had that sort of 15 to 20 minute ride anywhere I wanted to go in the community. And there was generally a good sense of a helpful community. And that can really be hard to find in some of the larger communities as it grows. Now, I understand you've been here a lot longer than me. I want to ask, are you really a lifelong resident of Richmond Hill, born and raised? And if that's true, can I say this? Were you like a young Joe running around the streets of the hill, or what?
Well, I was, Guido. I definitely running around the streets as a young Joe, not born, but definitely raised. I was 5 years old when my parents moved west to Richmond Hill. And at that time, it was 25,000 people. So you can imagine how much it's changed over 40 years. We've seen a lot of growth. We're just on the northern border of Toronto itself. So that mega city of Toronto is growing into Richmond Hill, and we're transitioning from a very quiet suburban town into a major urban center.
Yeah, and I guess I've been here for that part of that growth. But 5 years old, so do you actually remember the move to Richmond Hill at 5?
I do. I remember first moving and thinking, where are they taking us? Moving way up north. It seemed at the time to be a long way away from the city of Toronto. But we had a very, very quiet community where you could play hockey in the street safely. With the nets, and rarely had to move the nets with a car coming by. But I played hockey in town from 6 to 16. Baseball, sports growing up, elementary school, high school. I'm a Richmond Hiller.
You're a Richmond. I was going to ask, because I had read that those were some interests of yours, some football and some hockey, and you know what? I live on a street, and I can still play ball hockey with my kids on the street, and it still feels like a safe community, a bigger community, but still a safe community. So it's good to hear that.
If I remember, Guido, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
You're in the northern part of Richmond Hill, right?
So let me tell you this. It's interesting that you asked that. Yes, I'm in the northern part of Richmond Hill. When we first came here, and they gave us on an envelope, and I can't remember. I got this basket or something from the community, and it had my address.
Welcome wagon.
Yes, the welcome. Thank you. That's what it was. I got a welcome wagon thing, and it had my address on it, and it said Upper Richmond Hill. And I remember saying to my wife, I said, I don't, Upper Richmond Hill, it sounds very uppery. Like, I said, can't we just be Richmond Hill? And I said, well, maybe it's because of the logo. I wasn't cluing in that we were on that cusp of the northern border, almost with King City, right?
Well, that's it. I mean, we're a community, and more a cohesive whole, and we have lots in common. And Richmond Hill, we stand alone as a unique community. We have our own unique character, but we have the best of both worlds. Like, if you're in the southern part of Richmond Hill, you've got a subway station coming in 5 years, and if you're in the northern part, we've got thousands of acres of protected land and 5 lakes, to enjoy. So lots of green space and lots of open areas. So truly the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? The Kettle Lakes and the trails and the paths, they were a welcome addition to our activities as a family, and we've taken advantage of that. And I see it every all year round. Actually, I was going to say every spring and summer, but it's really all year round, because with the pandemic, we did some hiking, in the winter, and folks are out and they're really enjoying that part of the community, Mayor Joe. Now,
well, that's it. I'm on the Toronto Regional Conservation Authority, looking after those walkways and paths and trails and those kettle lakes. And a big thrust of what I'm doing is trying to improve and enhance those natural spaces, because people in Richmond Hill enjoy it.
Yeah.
And it's difficult with the pressures for development that are coming upon our little town.
Well, I'm gonna ask you about that a little bit later. I don't want to lose, before we move on, I don't want to lose the moment of the fact that your youth in Richmond Hill, because I think it's important. When you spend time with someone or in a place, you build some roots and you build some foundations, and you sort of get a sense for the growth of the community. So if I ask you, thinking back to your childhood days and growing up in the community, is this what you thought, or where you thought the community would be when you look back and then do a flash forward? And I don't mean maybe 5-year-old Joe, but at some point you started to, think about the community like we all do, right? Like, hey, this is my town. This is, what's it going to be like in 10 and 15? If you look back and you look forward, because you spent so much time here, what is it? Is this what it was going to be to you in your mind?
Well, absolutely not. As a child and even as a teenager, I could have never fathomed what Richmond Hill would have become. We actually went camping at Yonge and Highway 7. The future site of the subway, there's now 35-story buildings where it was once a forest that we regularly pitched a tent and would have a campfire and sing. There's absolutely nothing on the east side of Yonge Street. The entire half of Richmond Hill was nothing but forest and agricultural. It was farmland. So certainly, as a child, never would have thought it would look like it does today. But as I got older, I took political science at Carleton for 2 years, came back to York and finished, close to home. So really, those 2 years I went to Ottawa were the only time I was away from Richmond Hill. But I did get a political bug, and I started to look and think about the community and what it's going to be, and how can I play a bit of a role in determining the future.
So it's interesting that you brought us to that sort of juncture, because I wanted to ask you, and I keep going back and forth here a little bit. You were first elected in 1997. You've served 4 terms on Richmond Hill City Council. And I was going to say to you, well, when did you first decide that you wanted to get into the municipal political route? And did you have, you alluded to it a little bit, but did you have that sort of aha moment where you said, hey, you know what, I'm inspired to fix or change something or advance something in the community?
Okay, well, the aha moment, I guess, boy, I'd have to set it up a little first.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was 26 years old when I was first elected. So I was the youngest elected official at any level in a city over 100,000 at the time. Since my record's been broken, there's been people elected as young as 19, actually. Mm-hmm. But at that time, as a 26-year-old, it was unheard of that not only would I run, but I was successful the first time I ran. But I was shortly out of university. I did get some business experience, but what precipitated me running for council in Richmond Hill was really I was disgruntled about party politics. And as a youth and in my early 20s, I spent a lot of time volunteering and learning both in the Liberal Party and the PC Party, and I understood that 2 or 3 party system really limits what people are able to say. All those representatives don't really have free speech. The party tells them what to say. They're a mouthpiece for a platform. And then I met Bill Bell, who was the mayor of Richmond Hill at the time, and he said, we don't have any parties, and I can say whatever I want. I truly represent the people here in Richmond Hill, and if the people here don't like something, I can change it. That's what's inspired me. That's what encouraged me to get involved at the municipal level and to run for council and to run unencumbered from a political party, because
Right.
I wasn't finding that I was fitting in with any of the parties. I wanted to serve the community here and the people here and what their needs are and what their concerns are. I wanted to truly represent them without being inhibited by promoting a party line.
That makes complete sense, and I think I have to appreciate your transparency on that. I'm curious, at 26 years old and being at the time, like you said, one of the youngest elected officials, how was that met? Like, was that met any differently with the rest of council at the time, or was it, hey, yeah, welcome, like some fresh ideas, let's roll, right?
Well, I definitely had to prove myself.
Yeah.
I certainly had to spend a little more hours at time than others. I think just to rest everyone's mind at ease that I am capable. I do know what I'm doing, and I'm researched. I think I had to work a little harder than others to get accepted and not to be judged just on my age. And it's amazing how we get judged sometimes. Just our surface qualities. And so I had to overcome that a little bit.
It's interesting. You said it's we get judged on our age, and we get judged on our age when we're younger, and then we get judged on our age when we're older, right? So on the heels of that, like you're preempting me a little bit, because it's almost like I'm going to ask you something here where, and this is an important question, I think, that is going to help our listeners, especially our youth, because I always look to educate our younger listeners. Sometimes they're career planning or, just life planning and learning and things like that. I want to ask about overcoming challenges and being able to fail forward in the 4 terms. And you said, hey, I was the youngest elected official at 26 years old, but in the 4 terms that you have served, what would you say in that time period is your biggest challenge in the community? How did you overcome that challenge? And I think the third part of that, which I think is important to the youth too, is did it yield your greatest accomplishment? And it's okay if it didn't, but did it yield your greatest accomplishment? So what was your biggest challenge in the community? How did you overcome it? And did it yield your greatest accomplishment? Okay, before we get that answer from Mayor Joe, we're going to take a quick break and hear from one of the friends of our podcast, Chaser's Juice.
Hi, I'm Richard Chase, introducing Chaser's Fresh Juice, a local business in Toronto. We've been in business for over 20 years, initially supporting our local Toronto area and now servicing all of Canada. Chaser provides fresh organic juices, ingredients including citrus zest, dehydrated garnishes, and fresh citrus peels to enhance any cocktail or recipe you can think of. We have successfully supplied restaurants, distilleries, craft breweries, and bakeries across the country. Reach out to orders@chasersjuice.com for any questions you may have. We are a customized fresh juice company, and I'm sure we can help you. Thank you.
All right, now let's get back to our chat with the acting mayor of Richmond Hill, Ontario, Mayor Joe. And so what was your biggest challenge in the community? How did you overcome it? And did it yield your greatest accomplishment?
Guido, I guess I'd have to point to the one election that I wasn't successful. Back in 2010, I took a jump up from my ward council position to represent the entire city of Richmond Hill on York Region Council.
Right.
So, I took a jump up, and I wanted to stretch myself and go right across the city, and I took it really hard. So I finished second in that race, and there's no prize for second place in politics. I had 4 years on the sidelines, and I'll tell you, I think that worked out to be one of the best things for me. It gave me 4 years in the private sector. It gave me a better perspective. Having been so young when I was first elected, I think if I was strictly a career politician and didn't have the opportunity to spend some time both in the private sector and as a non-elected official, to be a more rounded, more balanced person, and to watch council from the outside looking in. I think if you have 20 or 30 years continuously in public office, you lose perspective. So I think I at that time was devastated. No one likes to lose or fall short of their goals, but in retrospect, I can say that that's really helped to make me a more well-rounded person.
Right. So you use that time to sort of reflect and self-reflect, learn, what are some of the things that I could do differently, and that resulted in some of your more recent accomplishments coming back, and now you're the acting mayor, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I came back in 2018 and garnered that position that I had tried to get in 2010, and things have fallen into place for me. And 2 years into the term, completely unexpected, our mayor took a medical leave of absence and asked me to take over. So that's why I'm the acting mayor of Richmond Hill. It wasn't even on my radar, but because I was the budget chair and handling a bulk of the leadership duties on council, I was the one that he chose to carry on while he dealt with some medical issues, and then it turned out ultimately that he did officially retire, and that's what's prompted this by-election. That's why Richmond Hill is the only city in Ontario that's having an election for mayor, and I'm the only mayor that gets to run twice in 2022.
Perhaps another first, Mayor Joe. Certainly, it sounds like I think the term that's coined these days is resiliency, and I think that's what you've alluded to in your journey when it comes to the challenge and overcoming that challenge. So just so everyone is clear, and we've said it a few times, I've been addressing you as acting mayor, but you've had multiple roles. You've been the deputy mayor, you've been a regional councillor, you've been budget chair, now you're the acting mayor. And I got a feeling that at some point you were juggling some of those things at the same time or in transition. How do you juggle those multiple hats? And what are some of the differences between them? Because, as a resident of the town, there's my council, there's my mayor, they get together, they talk, they make some decisions, and we benefit or live with whatever some of those decisions. But there's stuff that goes behind the scenes. And you mentioned earlier, hey, I had to put my head down, I had to really make sure I was reading my stuff and I was up to speed. But across all those different positions that I just mentioned, what are some of the differences, and how do you provide, in those positions, how do you provide service to the community wearing those different hats?
Well, it's all about understanding. It really leads back to my extensive amount of canvassing and door-to-door visits and the consultation I do right across Richmond Hill with so many people. So I have an understanding of what the needs are and what the concerns are. And then I just feel fortunate that I get to play so many different roles, so that I'm able to to fill those needs, to address those concerns from different angles. But it does get almost contradictory purposes when I'm the chair of planning up at York Region Council as well. York Region is 1.2 million people. It's 9 different municipalities, and there are some times where the best interest of Richmond Hill conflicts a little bit with what is in the best interest of York Region as a whole. So you try to keep those different scopes and perspective in mind, and I definitely look at it like Richmond Hill is my family, and my family comes first.
Right.
But I'm going to be good to our neighbors and our neighboring municipalities, and we're all dealing with the same crises and situations. Across the GTA, there's 17 municipalities that get along really well, and in one functioning urban area, really, that the GTA is 17 different cities that have all grown into each other and function well as one city.
Right. A nice handoff from city to city, right?
Yeah. But everyone has to protect their own interest, and my job is to protect the interests of the residents of Richmond Hill.
Are there stressful moments, Mayor Joe?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. At the New York Region Council, there's 19 different elected officials from those 9 different cities, and lots of competing interests. And on council, we have 9 members of Richmond Hill Council. There's the mayor, 2 regional, and six local ward councillors. So, neighborhood to neighborhood. Yeah. There's competing interests for limited investment dollars, and the 9 of us have to get along. And as the mayor, my job is to really make sure that we're functioning as a cohesive working group, that the 9 members of council are all satisfied in what's being delivered for their areas, and that they all have an equal opportunity to participate on our various committees and other city functions. So that's the nice way of saying yes. Sometimes I do have to referee a little and break up some disputes that are going on amongst the other councillors.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I'm saying, hey, I get it. You wear different hats. You have to be really aware. It sounds like, of what hat you're wearing, and show respect and fairness, and not just to people, but to the communities as well. And I think the important part there is that you have that awareness, and that it's part of what is going to make things function for you and for the others and for the community. Now, Mayor Joel, thinking about the community, and you talked about the upcoming election and having to run twice in the same year. But I mentioned earlier about the pandemic. Considering that we're 24 months into a pandemic, for all intent and purpose, you're a pandemic mayor. I don't know if anyone's ever said that to you, but you're a pandemic mayor. And this pandemic has challenged health. It's challenged education. It's certainly challenged businesses, right? So when I think about that, and what I want to ask is, what is your vision for Richmond Hill? How will you lead the community to that vision, given not just the regular challenges that we would face as a community under normal circumstances, but during a pandemic and the fallout from this pandemic, and the areas that I'm thinking about, and you've mentioned a couple. We need a balance of green space. We're rich in green space in Richmond Hill. There's certainly a lot of growth. Like I talked about earlier, the population in 2021, there's a projection that by 2031, we're going to be almost at 243,000 people. That's a far cry, difference from when you moved here and you were 5 years old, right? But there's that. There's taxes. Because people are going to say, hey, we've been on hard times. I don't want my taxes to increase. But at the same time, we know that our services have taken a hit during the pandemic. So you're going in and there's all these I'm looking at them as challenges. Maybe you might look at them as an opportunity because you've got a different lens on them. But let me throw that back over to you, right? We got these challenges. What's your vision for the community moving forward?
Okay, well, Guido, it's been an enormous challenge. There's no question. I mean, the word unprecedented gets thrown around, but it truly is. The times that we're dealing with, there's nothing you can look back on in history and say, well, when there's a lockdown for a long period of time, here's how people in government react. No, there's nothing to look back and guide us on because we've never been in this situation before. I think you coined a good term there. I hadn't heard that before. Maybe you could patent it, but I am a pandemic mayor. and I was from the very outset. The mayor was actually in Florida at the time the emergency broke in early 2020 there in February. So I was in the acting mayor role at that time. And even if he did come back, he had to go into quarantine for 14 days. So I was the one deciding, what do we do? Do we shut down City Hall? You can't imagine how unfathomable that is when someone first, poses that as an option the fact that maybe we should just completely shut down City Hall and send everyone home and try to cope somehow remotely. At the time, it's so daunting, and it was just nothing short of miraculous how well in our case 1,400 public service employees were able to remain in their homes and still provide that service. We never really missed a beat in terms of being able to continue to provide the city services that people depend on.
Right.
We never missed a garbage collection. The snow got shoveled. It was still winter at the time. All of these different things happened, and City Hall was closed. It was closed for 6 months originally, and we've had over the last 2 years. We only opened up there for about 3 or 4 months. So we're completely changing the way things are done. And the COVID reality has changed so many other things. And you mentioned those green spaces and those open spaces. Never before had it been so important. We have lakes that are completely surrounded by forests and walkways that are completely open to the public. And you would go anytime, there'd never be more than 5 to 10 people. Because people were confined to their homes, they were really seeking out these public open spaces to the point where there was 100 or 200 people for the first time ever using our different parks that were completely underutilized before. So and everything has changed. People want those public open spaces. They're more important than ever. Protecting those public spaces are more important. Providing more public spaces in the densely populated urban portions of Richmond Hill is so important. And we had plans for a major corporate center and plans to build office towers, and now we don't even know if the reality of the corporate headquarters and the need for these office towers is even going to ever materialize again.
Right.
Or are we going to completely change the live-work relationship?
Yeah, and there's a whole physical and mental health aspect that we could get into that piece of it. But you said the green spaces become more important than ever. But I'm looking at, another population growth, and we're looking at almost 22,000 new residents per year. How are you going to balance that? Like, we don't want to lose the green spaces, but we're sprawling out. Is there a plan?
Well, we have a plan, Vision 2040. We know that we're going to grow to 300,000 by 2050. That's going to happen. That's a reality. So we're going to have almost 80,000 more people coming to Richmond Hill in the next 25 years. And where those people are going to go, and in order to protect those green spaces, it's going to mean high density. We've got proposals for 70 and 80-story towers above the new subway station that's coming to Richmond Hill.
Oh wow!
We're at a point here in Richmond Hill, being the end of the young subway station, where there are 5 modes of public transportation intersecting at the same point. And nowhere else in North America does that happen. We have a 407 corridor that we're going to have a bus only dedicated rapid transit way to get to Toronto Pearson Airport in 17 minutes from here, and public transit to the east end of Toronto, an east-west route intersecting with that young subway right at the point where the GO train it also intersects the young subway, and then coupled with our York Region Transit and the new Viva service, where we have a dedicated bus lane down the center of Yonge Street. We are transforming from a suburb of town that's completely dependent on cars to a transit-oriented city where we're hoping to render the need for a car redundant and unnecessary, as we have retail first-floor concourses and underground parking and high-rise developments where people can live and with offices and new buildings. We've just located Amazon in Richmond Hill, the fourth largest company in the world, has chose this because they understand what a hub the new Richmond Hill Corporate Center is going to be. So we're going to compete with downtown Toronto. Only Union Station itself, in the heart of Toronto, is better serviced by public transit compared to what's planned for Richmond Hill. So it's extensive planning. It's exciting. We're just geographically situated so ideally, and Yonge Street is always the main artery
right.
of the Greater Toronto area. It's such a fabulous international city, and the growth along that main artery has reached our former little town, and we are now going to be the center of it all. I truly envision Richmond Hill as the centerpiece of the GTA.
It's interesting that motto. When I was living up in Sault Ste. Marie, there was a mall there, the Station Mall, and their motto was the center of it all. You made me think of that. But I was thinking that I was like, hey, I guess the place to be is going to be Richmond Hill if you want to get to anywhere else. It sounds that way, but it sounds like you've also got some balance there where you're saying, yeah, we're going to have this look and feel like, maybe our neighbors to the south of us, but we're going to maintain a whole bunch of green space so that you could still go out and do the trails, enjoy the Kettle Lakes. Like we're not going to lose that. And it sounds like part of the plan is in how the design of the architecture of the buildings is going to take place and the planning as far as that goes. Am I hearing that right?
That's right. That's right. There's lots of urban centers, but if we're able to do this right, we're going to maintain the best of both worlds. That in this city you're going to have all of the benefits of a major downtown, high density urban area, walkable community, plus 10 minutes to the other end of the city where you've got thousands of acres of open space and those Kettle Lakes and all the trails and walkways and the almost country to enjoy.
And I want to, Mary Jo, I want to level set this because quite often we ask our politicians and we say, hey, what's the plan? Give me your plan. And we hear these wonderful things, and then something goes left or something goes right. I mean, we can't. We're looking into a crystal ball sometimes. Yes, we've got planning, but nobody would have envisioned COVID-19 and the things that we've and some positive things have come out of it. You talked about remote work and how that's going to change some of the landscape of some of the office buildings and other things like that. But we're talking out to 2040 here, and then a lot can happen between now and then. But I think the important thing here is what I'm hearing. There's a plan for green space. There's a plan for economic growth. There's a plan for the taxes and finding new efficient ways to maintain our services. And trying to balance it all out over the next few years with all the other changes that are happening. So it sounds exciting. I'm hoping that people who...
It is really exciting, but it's not pie in the sky. It is large in scope, and we have the view to 20 years from now, but it started now.
Right.
We've already gone out to tender on the detailed design for that subway. They're going to start digging next year. They're going to start tunneling. And we've seen examples of the subway coming to York Region already. So, it starts next year. It's really in the next 5 to 10 years that this transformation is going to take place. And a lot of it has already happened. If you look at Richmond Hill today versus even just 10, 15 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
We are in the middle of that change. And it's not a projected, picture of what might happen. This is
in motion.
We are in the center of it all, and we are experiencing it happening and planning for it. But like you said, no one predicted COVID.
No.
No one knows what the future holds. So we have to be flexible. I'm someone who, if you can't avoid it, embrace it. I'm not terrified of change because I think people are resilient. I think our systems are resilient, and that we can adapt to anything that comes our way.
Yeah.
And that's been reinforced by seeing how well this community has fared through COVID. And I think globally, It's amazing how we've responded, and I don't think any of us could have predicted 2 years ago that there would be a global pandemic that we would all adjust to as well as we have, and how compliant the population has been to truly putting that health concern first.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think it's been all about adaptability, and I think it'll continue to be about adaptability. Mayor Joe, let's we're coming towards the finish line in our chat here, but before that happens, the election, you're competing against, if I can switch gears here a little bit, you're competing against 8 other candidates. That's a lot of choice for the citizens of Richmond Hill. Thank you, because today, you've talked about your roots, you've talked about your path, you talked about your vision. But what sets you apart from every other candidate? Like if folks are listening in, and again, it's not just Richmond Hill, but other areas are listening in, right? Why should they vote for Joe DiPaola?
Okay, Guido. Well, I won't talk about my opponents, but I'll definitely say that I am uniquely qualified for the role. I have been leading a lot of what's happening in Richmond Hill as the budget chair, as the chair of art planning, and then the chair of the planning for York Region as well. And I've been representing Richmond Hill on the Toronto Region Conservation Authority, on York Region Transit. I've been dealing with the Ontario Big Mayors Caucus, and working with other mayors on resolutions that affect Southern Ontario as a whole. I've created those relationships, and I've worked with Metrolinx to get the subway. We created an entire new alignment for that subway in order to benefit Richmond Hill and help to merge what the province is building with that major underground transit infrastructure with our secondary plan and what we're planning for Richmond Hill. So I'm the one member of council who's involved in dealing with all these external agencies, and as well I'm the one member of council who was a part of confidential negotiations to bring companies like Amazon here, and I'm partnering with a lot of other stakeholders and private interests and public ministries for the best interest of Richmond Hill. So none of my colleagues are at that stage yet where they've had that type of experience. I think it's so important. The role of mayor is so important, and I just encourage people to consider that. Like any other job, it really helps to bring experience to the table when you're stepping into a role and you want to hit the ground running. Yeah. And I know I'm ready to do that.
Thank you. No, it's important. And, I'm hearing, hey, like I've got experience. I'm invested. I've been around here for a long time. I've made connections and I've got relationships. And I want to.
There's no substitute for that organic experience that we talked about earlier. Just having lived here so long, grown up here, and consulted with so many people from Highway 7 to Bloomington, right across the entire city.
Yeah, and I want to thank you because I think when you started to answer the question, I want to thank you for keeping it positive, because it's so easy in these scenarios to get into sort of negative politics, and I think everybody's kind of, we're tired of that, right? So it's refreshing just to hear, hey, this is who I am and this is what I bring to the table, and really, take your journey by your own path. And I think that's important for people to hear that. Mayor Joe, I have to thank you. I know you've been busy, and getting the time with you. So, and I've kept you a lot longer than what I think I initially asked you to keep you for a few questions. So thank you for doing that. But as we bring the chat to conclusion, I've asked you a lot of questions. I'd like to give you an opportunity for any open comment. Is there anything that you would like to leave us with that, maybe I didn't ask or that you just want the community to know? By all means, I just want to give you that opportunity.
Okay. Well, Guido, I'll tell you, at the municipal level, we shovel the snow, we collect garbage, we provide, community centers and libraries and those local city services. that are so important, and we really don't end up wading into those social issues. You know, the health regulations come down to us from the province, and you know the federal government discusses those contentious social issues, and you know, we're normally providing a service, but I really feel, you know, a kinship with people in Richmond Hill, and I'm really concerned with the balance that needs to be struck, and I'm concerned about the emergency nature of this pandemic, sort of superseding the rights and freedoms that we should enjoy as Canadians. And when it comes to your own personal private health, you know, your medical procedures and your medical standing and whether or not you've been vaccinated is normally and should be a private matter for you and your doctor. And now governments are sort of reaching a little further into the lives of individuals that I'm comfortable with. And I know there is a segment of people out there in Richmond Hill who you know, are kind of lost faith a little bit in governments, and they're wondering, you know, if governments are overreaching. And I hear them, and I understand, and I am very leery of overstepping what our rightful function is, and protecting people's rights and freedoms. And you know, I just want your listeners to know that I'm conscious of the need to keep that balance. I'm conscious of the need for people to have free speech and to be able to speak up on anything and how they feel, that they shouldn't be censored, that debate is healthy. And like I said earlier, I'm not a member of a political party, and I can take a controversial stance and not be thrown out of a party. I'm gonna always advocate for the rights of the people in Richmond Hill, and you know, make sure that people's human rights are put first and foremost, and that's never violated. I've taken a stance recently on Bill 21 in Quebec, where a young lady was fired as a classroom teacher simply because she wore a hijab. That's what
Right.
Bill 21 has allowed to happen in that province. And you know, from over here, for what it's worth, myself and a number of other mayors have spoken out and said that's un-Canadian, and it violates our Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Mm-hmm.
That what makes Canada a great place is that you can celebrate your culture and worship as you see fit, and that you're free from any discrimination for your choices and your cultural practices. So that's something that's important to me. So even though we don't deal with these social issues in providing city services, I'm someone who really wants to speak out for injustices and do what I can in my own small way to make sure that people's rights are not tread upon.
Yeah, you're right. It's a delicate balance, and being free of a political party perhaps allows you to walk down that center line and be able to make the adjustments necessary to do those things. So I think you hit on a valuable point, and I actually appreciate that you mentioned Bill 21. You know, I always say we're the podcast that has a little bit of something for everyone. We focus on culture, diversity, inclusion, anti-racism, and a whole bunch of other topics as we strive to educate and you know, help people. So thank you for that last little tidbit that you've given us. And again, Mayor Joe, thank you for doing this with us. And I certainly wish you the best of luck, and the other candidates the best of luck as well. Richmond Hill will have a decision to make, but thank you for your insights tonight.
Well, I really enjoyed it, Guido, and you know, thank you. It's a great opportunity to just chat about things in general.
All right, and we'll you know, stay safe, and best to you in 2022. All right, folks, that was Acting Mayor Joe DiPaola. In Richmond Hill, voting day is on Monday, January 24th, 2022. Internet voting will start from 10 a.m. on January 18th until 8 p.m. January 24th. In this by-election, the voters of Richmond Hill will elect a mayor. The elected mayor will begin when they are sworn into their office and will serve the rest of the present term, ending on November 14th, 2022. Residents can find out more on the Richmond Hill site that I'll have in the podcast notes. I want to thank Acting Mayor Joe DiPaola for spending some time with me to give us some insights and sharing his vision. Now, I do want the audience to know that I did ask some of the other candidates in the past if they wanted to be guests on the podcast, and those opportunities just never materialized. But the one with Joe did, and that's what you heard today. There's always an open invite to other Richmond Hill candidates or from any other community or level of government. Of course, be happy to have you to have the conversation. So thank you very much, and let's get to our next segment. An article from GuidoPerino.com called A Return to Office Prehistoric Flashback. Do you remember the pre-pandemic routine when it came to getting ready to go to the office? It was probably a little bit different depending on how long your commute was to and from the workplace. Either way, it likely involved getting up earlier than perhaps most people wanted so they could get to the office. The routine may have varied, but could include things like shower, breakfast, help the kids, do the dishes, school drop-off, daycare drop-off, gas in the car, and then get on the road for upwards of a 2-hour commute one way. Maybe there would be a stop to grab a coffee in a long drive-through line, but not quite as long as the one caused by the arrival of Tim Biebs. This was followed up at the end of the day with a similar routine, perhaps in reverse order, while adding a scramble to get supper ready, deal with homework, clean up, get lunches ready for the next day, tuck the kids in, and check your work phone in case you missed something while you were picking up the kids. Followed up by crashing out on the sofa, watching that favorite show you recorded a week ago that you hadn't quite gotten through yet. Life was busy, but was it busy for the right reasons? The pandemic demonstrated on a global scale that it was worthwhile reconsidering our return on investments from a work-life value perspective. Whether society and leaders translate that into a learning opportunity that changes how and what we do will be determined by the long-term adjustments of possibly misguided agendas that are politically or economically driven. If the desire and belief to return to pre-pandemic inefficiency and waste is a marker for perceived success over the pandemic itself, well, then we will have learned little outside the medical science of COVID-19. If, however, the lesson is translated to a modern model that shows real-time extensibility and intuition that supports efficiency, the benefits realized during the pandemic can mature to support better mental and physical health, an improvement for the environment, and an economy that is not dependent on business and people geography. The pandemic helped two important mental health realizations come to the forefront. First, that not everyone benefits or excels from working remotely. Second, that not everyone benefits or excels from working in an office environment. The idea of not being able to interact with another human being in a physically present environment was almost unbearable for some. Equally, there were those that thrived remotely as it relieved travel time, family schedule challenges, and financial burdens, among other pressures, removing barriers that consumed their daily thought and time as they gladly embraced online tools. The lesson learned is that neither model provides a one-size-fits-all approach. Forcing one over the other where there is no operational benefit to an organization won't produce better results, although it may more likely impact mental health. In a pre-pandemic article from Mental Health America titled "The Mental Health Benefits of Remote and Flexible Work," it was cited that by offering flexible work options, companies are signaling to their employees that they can and should devote more time to health and wellness. That's likely why 77% of those we surveyed said flexible work options would help them be healthier. If the organization's operational capabilities won't be impacted, and there is almost 2 years' worth of data to support that now, then returning people to an office for the sake of returning people to an office isn't just poor use of data, it's negligent leadership that will impact mental health and the bottom line in the long term. It would be just as negligent to ignore those who can't cope at home. The ability to enable these two scenarios can be very delicate while avoiding exclusivity of one over the other. A return to the workplace will also impact the environment, and in fact, it likely already has. As the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, reported in May of 2021 that the environmental pressures that are mostly linked to energy use observed a sharp decline in 2020 of 7 to 8%, followed by a gradual recovery to 2 to 3% below the pre-COVID baseline projection. This includes emissions of GHGs, the air pollutants nitrogen oxide and sulfur dioxide, and fossil fuel materials use. The world witnessed that reality as smog over big cities lifted. It accelerated the understanding and belief that any of the environmental challenges we face can be overcome if we choose to overcome them. Unnecessarily putting more cars and other transportation on the road and then charging carbon taxes when it can be avoided also seems counterintuitive. For years, there's been conspiracy versus science arguments about the impact of human behavior on the environment, as some need to see the microparticles of pollution in the wind materialize in the palm of their hand before they were willing to acknowledge it. And even then, there are some who would believe it is just a magic trick. The pandemic revealed real proof in how the natural environment can recover if there is a willingness to change human habits. If you have ever wondered what your carbon footprint is, check out the online calculator at carbonfootprint.com to gain a sense of your contribution. Another fossil argument is that returning people to the office will support the businesses who no longer have the same pre-pandemic traffic. While there is some truth that an increase in the volume of people may result in the increase of business transactions, providing that same volume still wishes to conduct business there, it doesn't mean the same people have to return to the same place. The buildings that hosted people in 6 by 8 foot cubicles can be repurposed, especially during times where housing seems to be both in short supply and out of financial reach for some. The idea that those businesses can only survive if the pre-pandemic residents return is a lazy band-aid reaction that lacks planning, possibly fueled by an underlying resistance to change. Have you ever wondered why the dinosaurs became extinct? Various scientific articles provide a multitude of theories that culminate to environmental change, including, but not limited to, a meteor crashed into the earth, volcanic ash suffocated them, disease wiped them out, and their food supply was disrupted. Those ultimately come down to one common theme, and that is adaptability. When it comes to returning people to an office space, there are far more reasons to employ adaptability than to fall back into the "we always did it that way" mentality. I must wonder that if the dinosaurs could adapt to the change, perhaps they would have survived. Maybe they did, because when it comes to some of the theories about returning to an office space, dinosaurs still seem to be walking the earth. This is an opinion article by Guido Perino of the Go On With Guido podcast, the It's Not the Ref exclusive podcast, and sponsored by the Path Radio Mix Online. All right, everybody, welcome to the Go On With Guido podcast. Welcome back to the Four Fans Talk Sports, where everyone here is expressing their opinion as fans, just like you. No network obligations, no sponsor pressures, no product placement, just pure fandomania. Welcome back, Brian and Roland and Clark. Happy New Year, everybody. It's 2022.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Hey, we made it.
Barely.
So we're squeaking in. So there's a lot going on the past few weeks. We don't really know, I guess. I mean, we have an inkling. We don't really know what the sports world is going to look like in the new year, like for the rest of the year. So I wanted to kick things off with some of the things that have been happening and get everybody's take on it a little bit. Everybody good with that?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sure.
So there's been a lot of surprises. We're going to start with the NHL. There's been a lot of surprises, I think. But I'm going to give you a choice of 4. Who has been the biggest surprise in the NHL so far? Is it A, Leon Draisaitl, B, Alex Ovechkin, C, Nazem Kadri, or D, Steve Yzerman? Clark.
I mean, you'd think I'd go with Yzerman here, but I'm going with Alex Ovechkin. He's playing like a kid. He's playing better than a kid. It is kind of inconceivable to see how well he started this season, and it's a lot of fun to watch.
Brian.
For me, I'm going to go with the next leak, Nazem Kadri. Who saw that coming? You know, normally he's in the penalty box and leading the stats in stupid moves during the playoffs, but I think at this point he's around 5th or 6th in the scoring race. So he's putting out really good numbers for the Avalanche. He seems to be playing a disciplined game, and maybe he's finally got his act together. But who saw that coming? It's certainly not me.
Yeah, definitely two of them. Ovechkin and Kadri, two definite surprises. How about you, Roland?
I'm going to be a little bit of a rebel here. I'm going to go off board if I can. I looked at those names, and I'm going off board.
You can't go off the board. You can't. You can't go off the board.
I'm picking another ex-Leaf. I'm picking Freddie Anderson from Carolina. 16-5, 1.93 goals against average, 930 save percentage. He was given up for dead last year by the Leafs and basically discarded. He's having a great season.
I think that's you just trying to stick it to the Leafs. You couldn't take Kadri and use Kadri to stick it to them. You're just sticking it to the Leafs. That's it.
Because my other pick was Jack Campbell. Yeah, from the Leafs. He's having a great season too. Another guy where they're kind of saying.
So, Rolly, I don't think they left Anderson for dead. I just think the Leafs figured they had the better goalie in Campbell.
Yeah.
And so you're not going to carry two top goalies. So.
1A.
I'm going with that.
I don't know. They have Mrazek too. So, all right, he went off the board. I'm gonna follow the rules, and I'm going with Yzerman. Like, you know what? And you know what's sad about this is we're all ignoring Leon Draisaitl, who's having a fantastic season, like on a team with Connor McDavid. But I'm gonna go with Yzerman because in one of our last episodes we talked about the greatest captains of all time, and 2 of the 4 of us picked Steve Yzerman. And this past week, with everything going on with COVID, he had to weigh in and sort of take an opposite view of, hey, everything's fine. Let's not, I mean, he didn't say everything's fine, but you know the messaging, right? He was like, I don't know why the NHL players need to be tested. And all I could think was, man, I really liked you. I really liked you as a hockey player, but that's where it ended for me. I kind of said, yeah, I think that's what it was. I liked you as a hockey player, so I'm going to keep liking you as a hockey player, and I'm just going to ignore you now because you went the Aaron Rodgers route for me a little bit there.
If I can jump in there,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to say that you phrase the question as what's the biggest surprise, and I don't think we should really be surprised that anyone involved in the NHL has that opinion. Especially in management, they want to get the games in, they want to get the money made, they want to do it, and whatever the consequences are, who cares? Let's just keep moving forward and keep making money. And it is an unfortunate take to have, but I can't say I'm really surprised.
I guess, Clark, I held these guys in a little bit higher esteem than what they've proven to me.
Oh, that's your fault.
It is. I'll take the blame. I'll take the blame. Yeah. No, but I think in it, I'm sitting there going, you know what? They were hockey heroes. I think they need to stay hockey heroes, and that's it. Like when they get into these other areas, it just gets a little funky. So. All right.
When the Wings hired Yzerman, my biggest fear was what happens when he is no longer like the hockey god that he is in Detroit. What happens when things don't work? He says something that we don't like, here we go.
Well, I don't know if that's going to do it because Michigan. What are the vaccine rates in Michigan, Clark?
Oh yeah, I mean in Michigan most people don't care.
Right.
His comments, I mean, they reflect a whole lot of what we've got here. Michigan is at 53% or something like that.
There you go.
Let me flip it the other way. 47% without a single shot.
There you go. So he's got at least half the state on his side. So, all right.
So,
And they got the only unvaccinated player, too.
Right.
The only one for Tuesday.
Yep.
There you go. All right. Sticking with the NHL, they went into a pause, right? They went into a pause for the holiday season, sort of, I guess. But here's the question. Should they shut it down? Should they shut down the season completely, or should they try to play it out? Clark, shut it down or play it out?
So I want to say shut it down, but honestly, I mean, I don't know what a difference it would make. It's not just on the ice in the locker rooms that this is being transmitted. It's in communities, and I mean, so you shut down the games. You're not shutting down the grocery stores. You're not shutting down anything else. It's still going to be transmitted. And I think that's where what Eiserman was saying, what a lot of people are saying about maybe we should just test less. I don't really agree with it, but I can see the point of it's going to happen anyway. Now, that said, I'm playing devil's advocate, giving a little bit of benefit of the doubt there. Totally disagree with it because there's no reason to have the extra risks out there. These players might not get it at home, so there's no reason to have them in close quarters out there. There's no reason to have the fans in close quarters. And to continue using the Red Wings as an example, they're not even requiring masks, let alone vaccinations or anything like that in the arena. I was there for the home opener, and it was probably 10% or less with masks. So would shutting the league down stop those possible super spreader events? Maybe. And that would be a good thing. But there's a lot of stuff going on that it's not just the NHL, and we're not going to shut everything down again.
How about you, Brian?
Yeah. Hey, listen, I'm glad that they paused it, but I'm not advocating for a full shutdown, but I am advocating for going back to some pretty strict measures. If we think about what happened last year with the way they played and had a lot of strict measures in place, it was great for hockey fans to, at least who most of us are stuck in our houses and not able to do everything, to have some hockey and some entertainment to watch. But that's going to be something the players are going to have to step up to and live up to what some of those measures are. And I can't see a guy like, if they do that, I can't see a guy like Bertuzzi even playing, because the players are going to want to be really protected, and fan base is going to have to be extremely limited. To Clark's point, like seeing packed arenas with fans with no masks, that's maybe a little bit understandable a month or two ago before this Omicron's reared its ugly head, but now definitely not. So I'd be advocating to try and make it work, bring back some of the stricter measures, whether it's playing in a bubble or what have you. But if they shut it right down, we're all gonna lose.
So I'm hearing two play it outs with some modifications. How about you, Roland?
Yeah, I'm with that too. They're not going to shut it down. They're going to keep going forward. Probably the best thing to do is put extra things in there. For Montreal, you know what? The other night they played. I think they were the first team that played without the crowd back, and I think they do well in it. They won the game.
Well, that's another discussion. That's another discussion.
Not touching that one.
Yeah.
When the fans aren't there, so but it's going to go forward. They're just going to play it through.
Yeah, I'm a big part of shut it down because I just don't like what's going on, and I think that we can't have it both ways. But maybe if they make some modifications and relook at the bubble, maybe. But I don't know how much that's going to hurt the game either in terms of their finances and the cap, because there is some reliance on the gate and the concessions, and those things haven't been happening, right? So I don't know what that does to contracts and to caps, because is it going to drive the cap downward? And there's some big contracts out there. There's a $6.1 million contract that Kotkaniemi is going to have to get possibly offered next year. So I don't know how the Hurricanes are going to sustain that kind of cost for a 12-point player over 27 or 8 games. Anyways, I thought I'd throw that in there, but I'm more shut it down. If you keep it open, I say keep it open, but they have to take greater accountability. And, they can't be like some of the governments and just say, react afterwards, right? After everything's sort of gone downhill. All right, we'll see how that plays out to the end of the year and the Stanley Cup run. And of course, what players come back over the cap as well. The third topic, should the Montreal Canadiens trade Carey Price? He's been out. He dealt with some personal issues. He's come back. He's been on the ice. Canadians, I think, are fighting for last place with the Coyotes. They're a decimated team. Half the team is their AHL. They've got more injuries than I think anybody in the entire league. It's been misfortune after misfortune for them after that great run last year. Do they trade Carey Price? Clark. Oh. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think if they could trade him and get anything back, they should trade him, but they won't be able to. So keep him. They're stuck with him. The contract's too big. He's been out for too long at this point. I mean, obviously he can come back and play lights out and change things. But you missed the first half of the season and you got question marks. Question marks with that contract mean you're not getting anything for him. It's not worth it to trade him if you're not getting anything for him. So might as well keep him.
Brian.
I'd say keep him, even not playing, and even the fact that he's a goalie, he's probably got more points than half the players on the team right now. No, I'm just rubbing it into my Montreal Canadiens buddies here.
That's okay.
I say keep him. He's the sort of the legend of the Canadiens, and I think he's a guy that deserves to stick with the team and retire with the team. The Habs have been great at doing that with being loyal to their superstars and keeping them in the organization. And I think if they were to lose
just ask Patrick Waugh.
That would be a big blow. Well, that was a whole different thing, but
or Andrei Markov. But
I think I would keep them. As the organization, I think it's in their best interest, longer term, all things considered, to keep them in the organization.
How about you, Roland?
I think if I was in that position, I would try to trade him if I could. If there was another team out there that would be willing to take him, but that's going to be hard because of his contract, right? So I think that's the hindrance right there. Montreal would probably have to eat a lot of money if they even wanted to move him, and then what would he actually get back? Now with this new, Jeff Gorton there, totally different guy from outside the organization. Who knows what he wants to do, right? He could change. He could want radical change there in Montreal. It might happen. If there's a willing team out there, but it would be hard.
I would say that they should trade him, but not right now. But I think they should trade him, and I think that it made me wonder when they left him unprotected during the expansion, if that was a bit of a mutual discussion to leave him unprotected because it was time for him to go. And then when he took that personal leave, and I think about that, and I think maybe he was just mentally drained and done in Montreal, and maybe it was the right move for him, right? And it just didn't happen. But if he could get a few games under his belt, and I'm the Habs at his age and where the team is going and the depth that they have at goal, I'd trade him. And I got to believe there's teams out there that are going to take a Carey Price. Even an injured Carey Price they're going to take.
I don't think his value is what it was. Like he's not a top goalie value right now.
I think based on his performance in the playoffs and even with we talked about the Olympics a little bit, they were willing to give him a shot and look at him because he's got the pedigree, right? He's got the pedigree. It's going to follow him. You're going to give him that. Look, if there's guys in the league that are fourth line players who get that second and third and fourth chance, first round picks, what GM's not going to? If you're a GM and you can
the difference is you can usually give those guys a second, third, fourth chance on a league minimum contract. So, are you taking on a $10 million goalie to give him his second chance?
That's why I say, Clark, maybe not right now, like not at this moment while he's still recovering, but I think he should be on the trajectory for that team. It's time to move on. It's time to move on from Carey Price. And I know it's not part of the talk. I would even say it's time to move on from Brendan Gallagher. It's time to move on from, Lehkonen. Like, these guys need to turn the page now. Like, they're in a rebuild. But I hear they're shopping, or they're going to be shopping possibly some of the other folks on their teams. And who knows, by the time we air this, who knows what could happen. Jake Allen might be on the move.
What do you think they make the Habs trying to get Marc-Andre Fleury if he becomes available?
You know
local
what?
boy comes home.
Well, Jake Allen was a local boy who came home too, but I those guys, those types of contracts and those types of players for the Habs, it's not the right time anymore. It's not the team. Like they're in a rebuild and a retool that I think is going to take a few years now. So I like Marc-Andre Fleury. I want him to go win somewhere. I want Carey Price to go win somewhere. Even though I like the Canadians, I want them to go win somewhere. And I don't think that's in Montreal the next couple of seasons. I guess we'll have to wait and see though. I started mentioning the Olympics. I want to set this up a little bit because the question is going to be, should Canada, United States boycott the Olympics? Simple yes or no. But here's some of the stuff. The Council on Foreign Nations. China's facing intense criticism for its human rights record. Several countries, including the U.S., have accused China of committing genocide against just several nations, minorities. Allegations that China's denying. Rights groups have also called to attention, the Beijing's repression in Tibet, to crack down on freedoms, etc. There's been a coalition of nearly 200 rights groups argues that participating in the Beijing Olympics would be turning a blind eye to these abuses. We've also got a boycott after Peng Shuai, the Chinese tennis star, accused a former government official of sexual assault. And then she kind of disappeared. And then in December, she kind of came back and said, I made no such accusations. Everything's fine. So there's a lot going on in China. So there's been a diplomatic boycott of several countries, I think of which Canada and the United States is. But do they really care if diplomats don't go? Should Canada and the United States boycott the Olympics? Clark?
They never should have been awarded in the first place. That's really what it. Once they were awarded to Beijing, everyone was going to go, and it shouldn't have been there in the first place. I mean, I don't know that a boycott actually makes a difference at this point.
Brian, how about you?
I'd agree with you, Clark, that I'm not sure it's going to make a difference. And the other thing you got to look at it is here's where we start to blend politics with sports again. Mm-hmm. And for the athlete that has their once in a 4-year or one window opportunity to compete against the best of the world, we're asking them to make the sacrifice for something political. So I think from the diplomatic one, the politicians have said from a political standpoint, we're not going, and they're making that point. But asking the athletes to do the same is a bit more of a bigger ask, especially when they only have one opportunity. Some of them only have one opportunity and they're going to lose it. So I would think it would probably be an individual athlete's choice. And there might be some that have very strong feelings about the stuff that say, okay, we're not going to go. And others that say, I want to compete against the best in my sport and see where I stand. And they'll still go.
How about you, Roland?
These games have just become too political, just too political. I used to live to watch the Olympics. Now it's like I don't even want to watch them anymore. I wish they had a neutral country where they're held there every 4 years and stop awarding these games to all these countries where they spend billions of dollars all the time to build infrastructure. Just pick a couple of countries. Pick Switzerland. What's the country that's neutral? Switzerland? Go have your Winter Olympics there all the time.
You're gonna get
the snow, the infrastructure. Have the Winter Olympics there all the time. Stop moving these games around.
If you
Don Cherry.
if you get like some sort of ambassador job with Switzerland, I'd like you to, just remember where it all started. You're not on the payroll, are you?
The politics of it. Every country has political problems, right?
I don't know. I think
it's just too much. It's too much.
I hear what you're saying, Brian. I hear what you guys are saying. But they're blended. We haven't separated those things. They're blended. There's a financial component for the hosting country. I just think that to quote a music quote, you're going to stand for something or you're going to fall for anything. And it just seems like when it comes to the Olympics, we don't stand for anything anymore. We say, we do these gestures and we look at the athletes and we say, oh, we don't want to hurt the athlete. I'm all for the athletes. I like completely, but there's these other bigger things at play here, and we need to find a different formula. I feel like they should just boycott the Olympics, but that's why these are just opinions, right? Because we look at these things a little bit differently. So staying with the Olympics, guys, forget boycott for a second. We've been talking about COVID-19. Should the Olympics be canceled because of COVID-19? Yes or no? Should they become the 2023 Olympics? Brian.
Yeah, so I'm gonna sound a little different because I said in the other one that leave it to the athletes to decide, but I think they should postpone them. I think if they look at the record and where they are with China and all that, but also what's going on in the world with COVID, it's not the right time to be getting a whole bunch of people together.
Yeah.
Well, I think postponing them is whether you call that canceling or whatever, but I definitely don't think they should go on the dates that they're currently scheduled right now.
Roland?
I'm with that too. They should postpone them.
Are you disagreeing, Clark?
No, I think if you look at 2020 with Tokyo and the decision to postpone, what's different, what is better now that makes it so that we can go on with these? It seems I don't get that. So yeah, it should absolutely be postponed.
I'll make it easy. I'm with you guys. We got 4 cancel or postpones or whatever the case may be. Formula One. In December, the championship was settled at the last race between ultimately Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. Verstappen came out on top. There's a couple of controversial calls during the race, one in the first lap, one in the last lap. Who should have won the F1 championship? Roland.
It's been like that all year between the two. Going back and forth, calls that nobody liked. The teams are yelling at each other. It was an exciting Formula One season that I enjoyed. I watched all the races. I enjoyed it. In the end, it came down to, that last lap. I think at that first one in the first lap, Hamilton should have been told to slide back a slot. And for whatever reason, the race deciders there said no. And then in the final lap, because of the accident that came out of nowhere, and there was a Canadian, and now I'm hearing he's getting death threats from getting into that accident. And that allowed Verstappen to have a shot at it, and he ended up passing him because he had better tires, and he ended up passing. But that's racing, right? It was a great Formula One season.
How about you, Brian?
Yeah, the guy that won should have won is the one that should have won. Verstappen won it. There's no doubt in my mind that if the Canadian hadn't crashed, that Hamilton would have won. There's no doubt that crash. But they happened, so that's something that could happen. But Hamilton had it under control. He gambled. He went with the soft tires. He was just hanging on by the skin of his teeth. Here comes an accident, kind of resets it. And I know the big controversy was that they could have let the pace car keep going and just sort of ended the race under the pace car, in which case Hamilton would have won. But hey. How to Clark or Roland's point about a great season, you don't want it to end that way. You don't want that race between the two giants to end that way. So the race director made a call. Mercedes didn't like it, but he said let them race, and they had that one lap showdown, and Verstappen overtook it and took the title. Great ending, and yeah, he deserved to win.
How about you, Clark?
Yeah, in team sports, we talk all the time, and we've talked on here repeatedly about the refs and about whether they're influencing the game. And yeah, the race officials made choices and they applied to everybody out there. And Hamilton could have gotten tires, could have done something different. He didn't. That was his call. He gambled. He lost.
So you nailed it. That's where I was gonna go down the referee path, because I've always talked about the NHL refs. It was an exciting F1 season, but I really didn't like how much the race stewards or the refs got involved in the decision making in the last race. They decided not to get involved in the first lap, and they decided to get involved in the last lap, and it was just like it was just timing of all that. So
I would argue though, Guido, that not making a call is still getting involved. You saying that they didn't make a call means they didn't get involved. They did get involved. They didn't make a call.
Yeah, but I think
so that's involved.
No, but it was inconsistent. It's not like the consistency of it, right? In other races of similar ilk, they would have made a call. Well, then they didn't make a call. It creates confusion for the players, for the drivers. So the consistency of inconsistency is what I'm saying still exists. Should Verstappen have won? He won, so he should have won. Did it happen the way everybody wanted it to happen? Probably not. I know Lewis is upset. I know Mercedes is upset. I've never cheered for anybody other than a Ferrari driver, but I found myself cheering for Verstappen this season. He entertained me. He was off the charts entertaining. So I guess we'll see. There's going to be a reset in Formula One. They're changing. The hybrid engine era is over. I think that was the urgency that Mercedes had with Hamilton, was that they want to take advantage of this last year of the engine, because it's a little bit up in the air next season in terms of what it's going to look like for all the teams.
Yeah, I just want to raise the point that Roland made that shouldn't get lost, and that was about the poor Canadian guy that's getting the death threats.
Yeah.
I don't think there was any intention on his part to have an accident, and that's where sometimes we've got sports fans whose passion overtakes their logic and reasonability. To start weighing on this guy with death threats and pretty vile messages to him on social media is unacceptable. Just because you're upset with the way something played out.
We're seeing that over and over in a lot of sports, Brian, and it's completely shameful.
Sad sign of the times.
Completely shameful. All right, guys, switching gears. Our last topic is the Grey Cup game. It was played in Hamilton. I thought it was one of the best championship games ever that I've heard. I actually listened to it on the radio instead of watching it on TV. I've been tuning into the CFL more than ever before. If the Blue Bombers don't get that coin toss, call, and they pick going with the wind in the fourth quarter, do they win that game? Because it seemed to be like there was a big reliance on the direction of the wind, and super exciting. It ends up going to overtime, and in the CFL, you got to go for the conversion. You can't just kick the field goal. You got to go for the 2 points, which is super exciting. So, does that happen? Do they win the game? Was it entertaining? Start with Brian. You're a big CFL guy.
Who knows if that coin toss and that ultimate decision would have affected the outcome, because that's the beauty of the CFL. You never know what's going to happen in a CFL game. It's never over until it's that saying, it's never over till it's over. Both teams, like Hamilton had it at the beginning, thought they were finally going to get their elusive Grey Cup that had eluded them for so long, and then Winnipeg storms back, goes into overtime, super exciting. I agree, it was a great game. I feel bad for Hamilton. They've come close so many times, again, it just wasn't their year.
Hey, Clark, if the Detroit Lions are in the CFL, would they win the Grey Cup?
No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. They'd just be off the field faster. But I actually, the thing, and I mean, like, being in the U.S., we don't get a whole lot of the CFL. But the thing, the Canadian football to me has always had this like element of chaos to it. It just feels crazier than American football to me. And maybe it's because it's rules that I'm not as familiar with. I don't know. But it feels like more like weird stuff can happen at any time. And that's kind of what the Grey Cup game felt like to me, it just kind of epitomized that.
Yeah,
it was Hamilton's until it wasn't, and it was crazy and a wild finish. And no, the Lions would not win the Grey Cup.
How about
they have their own brand of crazy, and it's not CFL crazy.
Clark? We're gonna make you a CFL fan soon enough. Roland, how about the Steelers? Would the Steelers win the Grey Cup? Would the Steelers win the Grey Cup?
Yeah, the Steelers would win the Grey Cup. But going with what Clark just said, like, yeah, the rules in the CFL, like, you got 12 players in motion, everybody's moving, nobody's still. It's like what is going on here? It's like the flags would be flying all over the place, but that's what it is. I used to watch it a long time ago. I haven't watched it in a lot of years. A lot of people still find it, exciting, and that's great.
I've just, like, I don't know, maybe it's just I've had more time and I've been watching it. I've been falling back in love with it, and I thought it was a great fast game. And I think, Clark, you captured it. And Brian, you never know. You just never know. And I like that element of it. As much as I love the Montreal Alouettes, of course, Montreal, right? I'm an Alouettes fan. But I just love, even if they were not to win, I love the excitement because it could just, go either way.
Yeah, I think the big difference between the two games for me, I love watching the CFL because I love seeing offense and passing.
Yeah.
What you don't see as much rushing, or you'll watch an NFL game where a team's whole offensive strategy is rushing because they got a guy, and these are guys just lining up, and it's a big push and a push and a push, right? And to what Roland was saying, with the CFL, you got a lot of motion. Everyone starts running, and the quarterback's looking to find somebody to chuck a bomb to, right? So very different game. I don't think you can really compare the two, but yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting, and it's Canadian.
All right, guys. Just winding our chat down here. January 2022. What is your random prediction in any sport for the year ahead of us? Clark.
I'm going to say that the Detroit Tigers will make the playoffs.
Tigers in the playoffs.
A little bit of positivity here.
I had to say that out loud. Just I want to make sure. Tigers, Lions, Tigers. We're with the Tigers. Tigers make the playoffs.
Yes.
Brian.
Well, I'm going to stick with the term Tigers, but I'm going with the golfer, Tiger Woods.
Oh.
It was so cool last week to watch Tiger with his son Charlie, and holy jumping, is his kid ever a good golfer? Yeah. But the jury's out on what's going to happen with Tiger because he was driving around in a golf cart, and he's not at full health yet. But my prediction is I think he's got such competitive spirit in him that he's going to play in the Open Championship. I don't think he'll be able to play in all the majors, but I think the Open in Britain is one that lends itself to him being able to walk it. And I think he's going to try and get that. He's going to still chase that record if he can. So my prediction is we'll see Tiger Woods play one major, and it'll probably be the Open.
Yeah, and you're right. I saw that. It was good to see his, it was fun to see his son, Charlie, with his dad.
He's a phenom.
That was cool.
Yeah, can he hit some shots or what? It's like amazing.
The funniest thing, and they did it with a lot of the fathers and sons, was how alike they are in their swings, their mannerisms, everything. Just like the way they pick up the ball, the way they walk. It was cool to watch.
I like that part.
You see how he walks up? Just like a dad,
Yeah, it was cool.
Absolutely.
How about you, Roland? What's your random?
I'm going to stick to hockey, and just from what I've watched of the games, I'm going to say the Capitals and Ovechkin. I think they're going to raise the cup again this year. Just from that, the way that team is working right now. That's what I'm going to say for 2022.
I'm going to stay with hockey, guys. My prediction is that I'm going to get in trouble for this. I'm going to predict the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to lose in the first round. I'm going with the odds.
I won't bet against that either.
You know what? They're having a great season. They were having a great season, but I'm sticking. If the NHL plays out the season and the playoffs happen, I'm saying that they're going to lose in the first round.
Yeah, I'll bet you Johnny Prosciutto salami that the Leafs will get.
What was that, Clark?
You got to be more specific. Who are they going to lose to?
Oh, it's still too early. I don't know. That's it. The Washington Capitals.
They won't play in the first.
You know what? If I was Don Cherry, I'd be saying, yeah, you can take that to the bank. All right, guys. Hey, it's been fun. It's like I said, it's a brand new year. We're going to have a lot of things to talk about in the coming months. Thanks for doing this. Happy New Year, and take care, everybody.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you, and stay safe, everyone.
Happy New Year.
New Year.
So we typically like to leave you with a song at the end of the podcast, and this one was supposed to be Don't Forget Love by artist Franklin McKay. So it wasn't quite ready when we recorded the podcast, and it's recently been released. So here is, for the first time ever, a re-release of our podcast episode with now the inclusion of the new song from Franklin McKay called Don't Forget Love.
Can be, and I'm flying high on your wings. I know that it's true, and I'm calling you, and I'm open-eyed. You're sending me devotion from the other side. When I'm feeling cold and I'm tired and low, are you there? Are you there for me? When the rain's falling down and the sun's fading out, don't forget love. When your heart's reaching out,
That is 6-time Billboarding Canadian artist Franklin McKay with Don't Forget Love. Thank you for joining us on our re-release of Season 3, Episode 1 podcast. You can hear that song and more over at thepathrradio.com.